Hey, well, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, how was your Christmas?
My Christmas was great, man. Tech issues notwithstanding, we were just talking off air about this. How it's like after about 72 hours, you just kind of revert to your 12-year-old self. If you're staying with your parents, my mom was like banging on the door. It was like, "Mom, I'm working." I'm back being 12 years old. So it's always fun, to go back with the fam. It always grounds you. It humbles you a little bit. But I had a great visit with my folks. How was yours?
That's good. That's good to hear, man. Yeah, I've talked about this before, so I know I'm repeating myself. We do not go back to the Midwest on Christmas anymore, just because MCO at Orlando Airport at Christmas time is the single worst place on earth that exists at any given moment in time, and so we avoid it like the plague. And we have my mom visit during Heisman weekend, and then Claire and I will go to Chicago in January after the national championship. Is kind of a way to get both ends of being able to see my family, a couple of times. Lauren's family will come down at some point, probably really soon, maybe in January. But needless to say, we stayed here, had a really chill Christmas, and then took a weekend trip down to Dunedin for a couple of days, which that's like our kind of staycation, a couple hours away. But it was great. It was really, really nice. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm sure you've already seen think pieces and tweets and whatnot about this. Lane Kiffin, certain leather jacket, certain LSU bowl game that may or may not have mattered. What if I told you that he left it early because he heard that Cam Coleman might be entering the transfer portal? Would you believe that?
There you go. Every time there's a Lane Kiffin like irresponsible news at LSU, it's like, wait, he saw the bat signal.
Yeah.
So there you go. What I want for Christmas is Cam Coleman.
I don't blame you. I think everybody should. And by the way, that happened right before we were set to record this. We're recording at 12:15 Eastern time on Monday. And Cam Coleman, thankfully, the timing of this was on 3 reported that he will be entering the transfer portal, which suggests more likely than not that he is not coming back to Auburn. He will have a market that is so far and wide that if he does come back to Auburn, that is as big of a win as you can ask for probably this offseason outside of nailing your head coaching hire. But I'm fascinated to see how this is going to play out. And I know that we're going to talk all things portal at some point, coming up in the very near future here with the portal opening on January 2nd. We have a great pod coming up today. We have the playoff quarterfinal matchups to preview. Some guy by the name of Chris Marler is going to join the show in a little bit. We're going to talk all things
Ever heard of
Rose
him?
Bowl. Ever heard of him? People listening to the show who have been listening for a little bit. So we have that. We have Flat of the Week. But I do want to start with Cam Coleman, Will, because you're not alone. If you don't want Cam Coleman, I just don't think you've watched Cam Coleman play football, because he just like in a weird way, I think he'll have as wide of a market as anybody that's ever hit the portal, because you can tell yourself that there have been better players that have entered the portal, but with a position like quarterback, a lot of guys have returning starting quarterbacks that are established, or maybe you've already kind of, been like priced out for a guy. Like the Darian Mensah market was not particularly vast because it was very clear early on a team like Duke was going to be willing to pay that $4 million price tag. Same thing with the Carson Beck or something like that. With someone like Cam Coleman, I just don't know that you can tell yourself, if you're looking in the mirror, we don't need that guy. Like, who in their right mind says we don't need Cam Coleman?
Right. I mean, it's two things, right? And you hit on it. A lot of the big guys we imagine in the portal are quarterbacks, right? Well, you only get one quarterback. And so at the end of the day, Cam Coleman presents an opportunity to not only be a game breaking wide receiver, and it's a guy that I'm sure people will say, oh, you guys talk about Cam Coleman too much, but it's really imagining him in a competent offense, right? And how he can take over a game with a bad offense that doesn't take chances, that doesn't, throw the football effectively. Now you think, hey, there's nothing that would stop, in Ohio State and Oregon from adding him and even pairing him with an established guy, because you can never have too many wide receivers if the offense fits him, if the market is there, if the finances are there. I mean, you could build a super team with Cam Coleman as well.
It should be cheating if Ohio State replaces Carnell Tate with Cam Coleman. I'm just going to say it now. That should be illegal to return Jeremiah Smith and Cam Coleman on the same tackle football team. That's not, we can't allow that. That's when the NCAA needs to actually step in and say, guys, let's share the wealth a little bit. If you're on the outside looking in, that's probably the only situation you should be actively rooting against. But I maybe this is unpopular. I don't want to rule out the possibility that Cam Coleman could still return to Auburn. And I understand that if negotiations had gone perfectly, then maybe he's not entering the portal. Alternatively, maybe he just kind of wants to see what's out there and see what these conversations would look like, what type of situation he could step into, because these will be new surroundings for him at Auburn. Let's not pretend like just because it's the same school, it's the same exact situation. He doesn't want it to be the same situation, nor should he want it to be the same situation. And I understand people will say, well, what if Deuce Knight's the starting quarterback? Uh, Deuce Knight has yet to start against an FBS team. So that's still a new situation and a guy that it's not like he's got a ton of reps working with. So I
And
don't know.
worth noting, a dual threat quarterback is not always the best fit with a great
Yes,
wide receiver because it gets them off script, right? And it doesn't give you the best film sometimes when you have to anticipate a guy kind of extending a play.
I'm going to have to do a deep dive on some of the boxes that Cam Coleman has checked through his first 2 years with contested catches, with downfield stuff, and in relation to the offense that he's played in, which has not exactly thrived in those areas. And I do think that he is just as good as advertised, in my opinion. And you know what? He's going to make someone very, very happy as long as he picks the right situation. And I think it's really important for him in what is very likely his pre-draft season to pick the right situation. I think he has earned that right with what he has shown us on the field. So tough pill for Auburn fans to swallow. I wouldn't say it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he returns to your team, but it's kind of like that girl that you've been flirting with that all of a sudden decides, let's just keep things casual. Let's just kind of see what's out there, and let's not put any labels on it just yet. It doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, I mean, and I said this half jokingly about Caden Proctor, where I was like, the best thing you can do for your market value is to enter the portal and then you rescind it because it allows everybody to go, what if that guy were on my team? Let me imagine him as a friendly instead of a foe, and let me kind of give myself some hopium to get his name out there in a positive light, not just the knocks of, oh, these are the struggles he had at Auburn, but again, what if he was at Ohio State? What if he was at one of these bigger offenses? And so, especially in the age now where you see, the Lane Kiffin news, coaches moving kind of left and right, I don't know why you wouldn't enter the portal just to truly reset your market value and say, hey, I might come back, but just know I'm willing to go this far. Wait till Jimmy Sexton gets in the player game, because that's what coaches have been doing for 30 years, man. Go for it.
Jordan Addison is a more accomplished receiver to enter the portal. It was seen a little bit differently when he left Pitt, knowing that USC was going to be the destination. Pat Narduzzi all but said in as many words, USC tampered to get my best player. And he was pretty much, on a straight line path for Southern California. So a little bit of a different situation with Cam Coleman, the market that he's going to covet. We will obviously talk about that more in depth, but that breaking news came just right before we were set to hop on. So let's talk some college football playoff quarterfinal matchups. Let's start with the Sugar Bowl, Will. Ole Miss against Georgia, an all SEC Sugar Bowl. Georgia's a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is two punts. That's it. That's what we had in the first game when these teams played. Two from Ole Miss, both of which happened in the fourth quarter. This game had 78 points, yet the over-under for the rematch is only 56.5, which Lane Kiffin effect. That's a lot of Lane Kiffin we've mentioned the first 9 minutes of the pod. I should probably dial back.
I mean, I feel like too it could be a little bit of the Pete Golding effect, right? Where people, again, same deal. Pete Golding's name has been in people's mouths, right? Didn't have a great performance against Georgia last time, but talking about people have started to go into the statistical analysis of Ole Miss's defense, how strong it's been over the last couple of years. So maybe that does move the line down a little bit and say, well, now Ole Miss is a defensive team.
I think too, it's trusting that Kirby's going to make some adjustments and trusting that the three quarters that you saw Ole Miss have in Athens, which were remarkable offensively, that is unlikely to repeat itself this time around. Not saying it's impossible, but not as likely that we're going to see that. Also, probably would say that Gunnar Stockton's going to have at least one incompletion in the second half of this game. He did not have an incompletion in the second half of this one. He was perfect. He really was. He was absolutely on fire. And I think that was both as a thrower and as a runner. You could argue, hey, isn't Ole Miss also capable of making those adjustments and being able to have a better response against Gunnar Stockton? Why is it only a one-way street with that? Definitely, no doubt about it. Seeing that Ole Miss shut down what I thought was an improved Tulane offense suggested to me that Pete Golding has been able to juggle the first-time head coaching duties with still game planning and trying to come up with the right defense for an opposing offense. So there's a chance in this game that Centarian Perkins, we're all over the place with Centarian Perkins and the pronunciation of his name. I reached out to our guy, Michael Katz, to see if he can provide some clarity because people keep going back and forth. If you listen to the broadcast, they keep saying Centarian Perkins. I've looked at Ole Miss pronunciation guides and I only see Centarian Perkins. Apparently, Lane might not have even known how to fully pronounce his name. They just call him Git. So
As one does. What if we just call him Sonny Perkins? Is that disrespectful?
I like Sonny Perkins. Sonny Perkins is good. That's sticking. Good call, Will. Sonny Perkins. Sonny Perkins, Princewell, Uman Mielen. Great all-name team guys. Great all-name team guys. That is.
That one we got, folks. It's not for lack of trying.
Uman Mielen, I love saying. I really do. Princewell, Prince Lee, two different people. Yes, they are. But maybe they're going to be able to get after Gunnar Stockton after, I think, he's really shown a lot over the course of the last year. And I bring up the last year because the Sugar Bowl was where he had his first career start, and it did not go well. There are a lot of different, I think, things you could point to and say, well, this is why Gunnar Stockton got better. The surroundings got better. He got more comfortable in the offense. I think Mike Bobo's done a tremendous job this year. I've since been proven wrong. I said after this game, I thought Kirby should have fired his best buddy, and instead he doubled down, and Kirby was right. I was wrong. Imagine that. But I do think that what's so impressive, and I'm not sure if you feel this way too, the sense of urgency that I wasn't sure would ever come with Gunnar has been there. And I think that he has shown that in ways that makes me think Georgia can legitimately win a national championship. Just a sense for the moment, when to use his legs, when to cut it loose, when is a spot for the exact precise gunslinger type pass that he doesn't always bust out. He can be a little bit conservative at times, especially in the Georgia Tech game, but he just has this sense of urgency that is kind of the it factor. Maybe it's not fully encapsulating what the it factor is, but I just think what he's done in the last year should not go unnoticed, even if Georgia doesn't end up winning a title.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a big moment for Gunnar Stockton, given exactly what you said last year, the situation he was kind of placed in. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the reasons why Georgia lost that game really had nothing to do with him, right? You talk about the punt return, talk about the weird contacting an official,
That was
sideline
so weird.
infraction. And by the way, Bama got one of those in their game as well this
Yeah,
year.
we forgot to talk about that. That was so. I thought that was so ticky tack. And then on the broadcast, they're like, "Oh yeah, you got to call that in that spot." I'm like, "Do you? What? Why?"
Yeah, we've gone from 0 of this ever happening to 2 in the 12-team college football playoff. What punishment do you think happens to a Georgia player if they do that again, Connor?
Oh,
Azkaban?
I don't want to say they'll have to drive home because that's a problem for Georgia.
Greyhound bus.
Walk home backwards.
Walk home backwards with Kirby following you. Like the dad, if you mess up in the high school game, just telling you what you shouldn't have done that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that was so tough about Gunnar Stockton, obviously coming in for an injured Carson Beck, right? And we've seen they had a plan to bring him along. He's playing awesome this year, but that timeline was, to your point, sped up last year, right? And so gets put in the big stage. Outside of the really ugly turnover against Texas, I think played well given the circumstances. Well, now he has a redemption chance here. But I think Georgia is going to be facing some of those allegations of, rest versus rest, peaking too early.
For
Because
sure.
the last couple of times, we saw them, they're a little bit slower. However, to your point, I mean, it would be hard pressed to find a better, simpatico, a better, being on one page by a coach and a quarterback than we saw with Gunnar Stockton and Mike Bobo in this game, talking about using Branch to get 20 to 20, talking about kind of a little bit of trickery in the end zone. Lawson Lucky had 3 touchdowns in this game. Frazier had a receiving touchdown, using your personnel in such an effective way. So I don't think Georgia will ever play a game as effective and efficient on offense as they did that time, even with a great Ole Miss offense on the other side that they had to counter. So I think this game is going to look very different from last time because I feel like it can't go better for Georgia offensively, at least.
Yeah, and that's 56 and a half over under would reflect that. And Georgia can win this game if it doesn't look exactly like last time. That's the thing that they have working in their favor. Where last year, man, I know they won the SEC championship, but this was a team that had just so many potential potholes. When you were trying to map out a potential roadblock for Georgia last year, going into the Sugar Bowl, you could say Gunnar Stockton, huge one. Yeah, quarterback in his first career start. This is a big question mark. You had a very banged up offensive line. You had receivers who were dropping passes like New Year's resolutions. It was rough. It was a team that was accomplished, but very questioned. I think fairly so, and the results certainly reflected that with losing to Notre Dame. If you had to pick a roadblock for Georgia this year, going into this game and going into what they hope will be a college football playoff run, what's the roadblock? Like that's it's you can't say like every single matchup is going to work in their favor. You can't sit here and say that every single time they're going to be favored and they're going to have the advantage on the offensive line and they're always going to be better in the secondary. Like that's not what I'm saying. But what's the Achilles heel for Georgia? I'm legitimately asking because maybe you could say at one point the defense, the pass rush, the last three power conference quarterbacks that Georgia faced, Arch Manning, Haynes King, Ty Simpson, very accomplished quarterbacks. Georgia allowed 2 combined touchdowns to those teams, and they sacked those guys a combined 7 times. So I can't sit here and say that that's an obvious Achilles heel. I kept bringing up stop rate because the run defense was atypically meh for too much of the year. Well, the last team to have a rushing
That's my
touchdown,
rock band name, Atypically Meh.
atypically meh. I like that. Kind of Midwest, like a Midwest ska band or something like that. I could see that. That would play. The last team to have a rushing touchdown against Georgia was Mississippi State. Okay? Think about that. That was also the last team to hit 70 rushing yards against Georgia. That was so long ago that going into that game, people wondered if Georgia was about to get upset. I don't need to tell you how things have played out since then, but Mississippi State went 5-7, and Georgia earned a first round playoff bid after going 12-1 and winning the SEC in decisive fashion. So I'm not trying to say Georgia's invincible. Okay, Georgia can be beat, and for all I know, maybe this is the day in which Ole Miss is going to show up ready to go, and this is going to become the story of the postseason. Ole Miss and this post-Lane Kiffin world, they're going to have this galvanizing us against the world type moment, and it's going to come out in a stunning way against Georgia. But if you're beating this Georgia team, you're doing so with a heavyweight punch, and it's going to be talked about for a long, long time. Not maybe like Buster Douglas levels of the heavyweight punch, but not that far off from it. I don't think Ole Miss can handle Georgia's punches, especially if Kewan Lacey is limited in any capacity. TBD, keep an eye on that shoulder. That's one of those things that I kind of want to ignore what they're saying in the pregame because you know what they're not doing in the moments leading up to this is giving him full contact. And I'll wait and see what it's like when 3 or 4 Georgia defenders get him in a pile and land on that shoulder. And then we can have a conversation of what it looks like. So I don't want to pretend like I know how he's going to be feeling, for the majority of this game. But I think after another brilliant opening script by Ole Miss, like I think Ole Miss is going to come out firing offensively. Georgia's defense is going to take over and they're going to make those adjustments. Ole Miss is still going to probably put together a better offensive showing than anybody down the stretch has against Georgia. But once again, just not for 60 minutes. So I'm going Georgia 35, Ole Miss 21.
And I didn't know if it was a rhetorical question, so I didn't want to cut you off. But the answer, what's the roadblock for Georgia? It's themselves, honestly. I think at
Fair.
the end of the day, we've seen that there's no reason why this Georgia defense can't be elite other than themselves. We've seen there's no reason this Georgia offense can't be elite other than themselves. It's about avoiding the ice cream sandwich game like they had about against Texas on offense, where it goes, okay, you come out, you score 2 quick touchdowns, and then the middles, it's soft and gooey. And then when you need to get in business,
Chipwich.
exactly, a chipwich, yeah. And so, and they played fine, on offense in that Texas game. And of course, guys, the Bama game, I mean, masterclass, right? Particularly defensively. But what it is, when these teams have already played, I hate to make it lean so much on narratives, but you talked about this with Ole Miss, where last year, okay, they have you talked about this with Georgia, where they have the big names, but they didn't live up to it. Ole Miss, kind of the same thing last year, right? And so we kind of have these scrappy, dirty, gutted out versions of these teams. Both teams underwhelmed last year. This year, I think both teams see this is their shot. I mean, I think it would be no surprise for Georgia to win a national championship this year. I think it would be a little bit of a surprise for Ole Miss just because of the head coach situation. But as far as the boys in that locker room, they're riding all the way with Pete, and they have a ton of momentum from that on their side. So that being said, I am so fascinated by both sides of this matchup. Because on one end, you got Bobo, who we just said can beat himself, against Pete Golding, who is proving, hey, can I juggle? I'm a good to great defensive coordinator. Can I juggle that with head coaching? Can I kind of grow up and move to that next thing? And on the other end, you got LSU coach Charlie Weiss versus a defense that is ultimately run by Kirby Smart, right? In terms of the great halftime adjustments they've been able to make, in terms of lighting guys' butts up whenever they're not playing great pass coverage, like whenever those screws have needed to be turned or the levers, it's been Kirby Smart. So I think this is a game that can go, a billion different ways. I think the health of Lacey is a big deal, but I just lean back on that physicality of Georgia and what they've been playing with lately. Maybe it is a strength to be peaking kind of at the right time, like we've talked about with Georgia's defense, right? Where early in the season we ask, oh, you guys aren't getting pressure. You're not getting the TFLs. You're not getting after the quarterback. You're just kind of letting teams hang around. Well, in these last couple of weeks, like I said, offensively, it's been a little hit or miss, but the defense has come around. The special teams have come around. And I think Georgia's playing really lockstep. So it comes down to, again, having that trust in Gunnar Stockton, realizing that he is an elite quarterback in the SEC. And I think that not to say this disparagingly, but the guy that appears in the comment sections needs to appear in reality here. Gunnar Stockton needs to prove that, hey, maybe he was shunned from a Heisman invite. Maybe he is this guy that we've been a little bit sleeping on because Georgia's been such a machine. And so I think this could be a coming out party for him against a great Pete Golding defense. And so I'm right there with you. I got Georgia by double digits. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. But I think it's going to be it'll be gripping television for sure. And I don't think in the same way as last time. I do not anticipate a shootout in this one.
Yeah, if it gets up into the 30s and 40s again, like these offenses are going to be really scary moving forward. And if Ole Miss ends up winning this game, there will be a lot of people that are relieved that Georgia's out. One less contender that you have to worry about. Ole Miss becomes a contender if they beat Georgia.
Ole Miss
Okay.
is horrifying if they win this game.
Yes.
And I hate to discredit them, but Tulane's Tulane, Georgia's Georgia. If you beat Georgia in a postseason game, I mean, Kirby Smart's probably the best coach in college football, and he has that pedigree. He's one of the few head coaches that can say, "I've done it," and one of the even fewer coaches going back to the advent of the sport that's going back to back. So that really does legitimize what you're building in Oxford.
And I know some people will turn that into an anti-SEC thing. Like there are people that'll watch this game that'll turn it into an anti-SEC thing no matter what, like how this plays out, because that's just what you have to do.
I saw people talking about LSU losing to Houston as an anti-SEC thing.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah.
like, guys, do the bowls matter or not? Again, they don't matter.
When you want them to matter, they matter. That's the way that this works. It'll be 20 consecutive years because the winner of this game is going to a semifinal. 20 consecutive years in which the SEC will put at least one team in the semifinals. Greg Sankey, you can add that to the 7-page document of the SEC gauntlet. The winner will get there. We'll get the winner of Miami, Ohio State. We still have potential for a Carson Beck, Georgia semifinal. I'm just saying, like, I know it's going to take some things, maybe more so on the Miami side, but it's still at least possible. Okay. And there's a chance by this time next week, we're talking about Carson Beck getting a rematch against Georgia, which would just be epic theater. So keep that in mind. But last year, you had Texas get to the semifinals. It was the only SEC team to be able to get there. Bama got there the year before. Obviously, 2 consecutive years without an SEC team in the national championship. But 2014, Bama got to the semifinals. 2013, before the playoffs started, Auburn got to the title game. And then 2006 to 2012, nothing but SEC teams winning it all. 20 consecutive years of an SEC team, at least in the semifinal, some unofficial, some not. I will relay that stat to our guy Doug Lamarice. Make sure he knows to tweet it out during this game when he's coming up with anti-SEC. SEC is mid takes.
So right now, I mean, if you had to pick one SEC team to go the farthest, who would it be?
Well, it's Georgia. Come on. Still Georgia.
But their path is through Ohio State.
I would still pick Georgia. I would still pick Georgia because Bama's path is through Indiana. It's through the most complete team that we've seen so far in the regular season. Doesn't mean that Indiana is going to win a national championship. We're going to get to that in a second here. But I would still pick Georgia just because I don't necessarily think that Bama can win a title with a run game that's so ineffective. So, and if Ole Miss wins this game, then yes, they're playing with house money, and I wouldn't rule them out. But who's going to win 3 games from this point forward? Georgia's easily got the best chance.
What a great time for this transition. If Bama finds a way to beat Indiana with like 40 rushing yards, it would be the craziest thing I've ever seen.
If that happens, Well, you know what? We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. All right. Let's talk about that game. Let's talk about the Rose Bowl. The Indiana Hoosiers, my school, 7.5, no, 7 point favorites, I should
You're a
say.
bandwagon fan. You're a sidewalk. You're like a reverse sidewalk Indiana fan.
Sure. We'll call it that. They're 7 point favorites against Alabama. The over-under I have is 0.5 Rose Bowl sunsets. Early forecasts suggest that's in serious jeopardy. Rain in the forecast, maybe not lightning, but rain, it looks like. The joke is that this game is kicking off at 1 p.m. local time. So the sunset is kind of not going to happen unless this game gets really, really long. Never rule out the possibility of that. But, probably more pressing with the weather question is if it's rainy conditions in that grass, who does this favor? Does it favor an Alabama running game that's been pretty much stuck in the mud all season against an Indiana run defense that's, I don't know, nearly identical to what Bama faced against Oklahoma? Or does it favor an Indiana running game that's top 10 nationally? You could probably see which way anyone would lean with that discussion. Even with LT Overton set to return for Bama, a Bama team that keeps getting healthier, it's probably still advantage Indiana in the running game. As weird as that is to say out loud, pretty much everything in this entire preview is weird for me to say out loud, but I'm going to anyways. The joke is that you could literally put any running game in the country against Alabama's and say that the Tide don't have the advantage.
Well,
But
hold on. Maybe not my team.
uh, I think I'd still take LSU.
I don't know about that, brother. Just saying, there is worse out there. I want to be fair.
True. Bama did a much better job working around that than LSU. That much we know. And it didn't matter against Oklahoma. Didn't matter at all. That Bama ended up with 28 rushing yards in that game. I mean, the 30-yard run was kind of it in terms of the production. But what if I told you that Bama wouldn't need a run game, wouldn't need Ryan Williams to go on the road and overcome all of that? Would that make you feel like, hey, this Bama team has a chance to take down the top seed in this college football playoff and continue a run to the semifinals?
That's what's so crazy about that win. Is it's like, what do we take away from it? Play mini man at halftime. The football
Third
guys
quarter,
get
third
ignited.
quarter going into the fourth quarter.
There we go. There you go. It's like, hey, yeah, that's see, you shouldn't have a concert between quarters like that. It can
Weird.
mess up the whole momentum. Anyway, so yeah, but it's like, hey, the football gods are just gonna sneeze on you while you're punting. Like that's what's so weird about Alabama is like they won that game quite convincingly at the end, but didn't really answer the questions we had about them.
I've gone so far down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out all the various things that happened to Oklahoma in that game
How did they win that game, Connor? Like we
that
saw it, we understand it, but projecting forward, like what can we take from that game?
I'm convinced that Oklahoma would have had a better chance to maintain better vibes had it not had the PA guy. I shouldn't say the PA guy. I misspoke. The in stadium hype guy. Apparently at Oklahoma, it's just too much. And this is the type of thing that you don't get unless you're there in person. So I wasn't there in person. I'm not going to speak on that and how annoying it is. But everything that I've seen that's come out since then was like, they need to chill with that. And not that players were processing this amped up, too much in stadium hype guy, but it probably wasn't helping in the way that they hoped. Maybe not as authentic of an atmosphere. 50 Cent was coming in to try and save the day after the in stadium entertainment was apparently a bit forced. So that's my explanation for why Oklahoma collapsed in that game.
But that being said, those things, I mean, that's what we like about Indiana, as far as being well coached, not beating yourself, establishing the ground game, not, having those weird miscues. It feels like that's why Indiana has been able to methodically destroy the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's true. They've been extremely poised at every moment that they have needed to come up with a big time drive. They just have. And that's why they're the last remaining unbeaten. And that's why they go into this game as significant favorites. I mean, it's not Indiana minus 2.5 or something like that. This is no. Indiana by a touchdown. They've been the better team. I am fascinated to see how confident Ty Simpson looks. Ryan Grubb talked about it this week about just wanting to see him let it rip. And you could say, what are you talking about? Ty Simpson's going to have like 40 passing attempts in this game. Of course he's going to let it rip. He's going to have no choice but to let it rip with a Bama run game that's been historically ineffective. That's referring to the deep ball. Take chances. Embrace that underdog role. understand that against this Indiana defense, you're not getting a bunch of these 10 play, 75-yard drives. That's just not been their MO. Even against Ohio State, they did not really allow that. You need chunk plays. You need to find those opportunities and hit them. You can't have the drops on a deep ball that's there. You can't have Ty Simpson overthrowing a guy that's got a step. These are the moments that you have to be able to hit on. These are weird things to say about Alabama when it has always had the physical advantage against a team like Indiana that is perceived as lesser talented. But there are moments in which IU will gamble and maybe gamble a little bit too much in the secondary, and you can get hit for one of those big plays. Like they're going to be aggressive. They had like a 7-17 TD to INT ratio this year, but they'll occasionally get hit on the back end for one of those 40-yard plays. Think about Jeremiah Smith. I thought that play in the Big Ten Championship where Jeremiah Smith had like 2 steps on a corner, and if that ball is just thrown on target by Julian saying it's a walk-in touchdown, and instead it results in no points, when I get it, you don't want to overthrow Jeremiah Smith in that spot, but those are the types of plays you have to hit on that can make a difference in a game like this, especially when Bama is the underdog. The good news for Ty Simpson and the bad news for Indiana is that Stephen Daly, who had 19 TFLs for Indiana, the Kent State transfer, he hurt himself celebrating the Big Ten championship. Martin Gramatica vibes, maybe.
What if I told you, Connor, put yourself back in college? You're wearing, your Red LL jersey. Okay, we got
I
the
didn't
TFL
have a Randall
leader.
L jersey, but
Well, whatever. Yeah, you had who's the Raiders player that you had?
I
Woodson?
I had Charles Woodson's. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
you got your
Michigan.
Woodson jersey on, and I'm telling you, hey, here's the deal, okay? Your guy, he's your late TFL guy in the Big Ten. Well, he hurt himself celebrating a Big Ten championship in Indiana. What do you say?
The more I thought about it, the more I actually give him a pass because you know what, Stephen Daly, he came from Kent State. Kent State in the 2 years before he got to Indiana this past season, they were combined 1-23 in those 2 seasons. So act like you've been there before. Like we know Indiana's not been there before. That dude wasn't even used to winning football games until he showed up to Indiana. Like I say football games, plural, multiple. So I don't know.
He's a
I'll
young
give
on a
him a little
covered
pass.
stadium. This is crazy.
Yeah, like what's going on here? What do you mean? We don't have to play on Tuesday night? No action? What is this? Oh, great. Um, there's going to be a lot of those questions about Indiana having not been on this stage, and I think they're all fair. Like I think it all adds to the lore of this season and what they're trying to accomplish because obviously IU has not been to the Rose Bowl since the famed John Pont. I think you pronounced John's last name. I've actually never heard anybody at IU speak of his name. Led IU there in 1967. They lost 14-3. Who could forget? Technically, IU has never scored a touchdown at the Rose Bowl. Tough to be a Big Ten team as long as Indiana has and not have a single touchdown in the Rose Bowl. Of more significance, and I brought this up before, it needs to be brought up again. Indiana has not won a bowl game since 1991, Will. A single bowl. We're not talking about like, a bowl game out on New Year's Day. No. A single bowl game has not been won by Indiana since 1991. You know how hard
Like
that is?
we've done some of the Indiana stats, but I want to keep doing them because every time I hear them, I just go, "Oh my god, what?"
If IU can't end that streak, the bowl drought, it might just never be in the cards. It might not be because you won a Big Ten championship. You have a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. You have already your best coach in history, in program history, who could go 5-19 over the course of his next 2 seasons, and he would still have the best winning percentage of any Indiana football coach of the last 100 years. You have that guy patrolling your sideline right now. And if you still can't win a bowl game like this, when everything is teed up for you, I don't know. I'm just of the belief that your time just might never really exist if you can't get a win in a game like this. So you could look back at all the comical ways that Indiana has lost bowl games. Don't. It's not worth your time. Just know that it's bad. Take my word for it. This is different. This is a playoff game. It's not just your typical bowl game. And this is different than last year because IU got to this place by being the most complete team in the sport. And unlike last year, when the schedule just broke in the exact perfect way for Indiana to get into the 12-team playoff, there was no debate whatsoever about this team. Kurt Cignetti can no longer sell to his team, you are underdogs. They were underdogs against Oregon. They were
You know
underdogs
what?
against
I
Ohio
think he
State.
can. I'm gonna be honest because remember, Bama was the place they kind of like passed him over. They got the 5-star talent. I think in this specific matchup, I think he can one last time.
I don't really remember the circumstances of Signetti leaving Alabama are a little murky. Like Billy Napier technically took his job, I believe, as wide receivers coach, which go back and look at some of those early 2010s Bama staffs, where Signetti was, first start off at receivers coach, and then he ends up being recruiting coordinator, and then he takes a job at Indiana University, Pennsylvania, which is a real thing, IUP. Yeah,
Aren't they like the Mammoths?
they are. What are they?
Like the Mastodons? I'll get back to that.
No,
Anyway.
I think they're the red. They're like the Red Hawks.
Okay.
Are they the Red
Gotcha.
Hawks?
I'm thinking
I could. You
IUPUI.
might.
Anyway.
You could look that up. You could look that up. Um, I I think even Alabama knows that I use the more complete team, whether they admit it or not. I think even they will be able to watch the film and go, yeah, this is a really complete football team that we're facing. I would love to tell Kalen DeBoer after he left Indiana post 2019 to get his first FBS head coaching job. I would love to tell him, hey, you're going to get the Alabama job in the middle of the decade. And in year two, you're going to get to the Rose Bowl and you're going to be a touchdown underdog against Indiana. There's no way he would have believed that. There's no way anybody would have believed that coming into this season. And probably same thought for Signetti, who is this model of confidence and arrogance in every possible way. There's no way he would have actually believed that after he left Alabama post 2011 for, again, Indiana University, Pennsylvania, Division II. Is it the Red Hawks? Did I get that right?
Yes. Yes, it is. It is the Crimson Hawks.
Crimson Hawks. My
The
bad.
Crimson Hawks. And the Mastodons are, of course, Purdue University, Fort Wayne.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Who could forget? There's also IUPUI. A lot of satellite campuses. I can't explain them.
Yes.
They're everywhere. I don't know why, but Indiana breeds satellite campuses. Purdue apparently now doing that everywhere too.
I'll say this real quick though. I hit on this. I'm fully believing this conspiracy theory now, guys, about the Nick Saban orbit, where it's kind of like a full minor league system where you kind of got the big leagues at the top, Texas, Georgia, okay, and guys kind of move up and down. Like Pete Golding didn't exactly cut it at Alabama. Well, he wasn't fired. He was just kind of relocated he was kind of sit down to Ole Miss, right? I think same deal here with Signetti, where they were happy with him in his role, but in that system, you either move up or down. And it was like, okay, yeah, you could just kind of come back if you want. And he kind of knew that was a sign to be like, maybe I should look elsewhere because I think if I stay here, I think I'm going to stay right here. And that's not how things work if you trust me.
I think Signetti kind of hates Bama.
That's kind of where I'm going here. I think that he's a little mad about that.
I think he kind of hates everyone, but I think he kind of he hates Bama.
That's the thing. They're not special. Maybe they are special, but just that fact doesn't make them special.
Every interaction with Signetti and Saban on the College Game Day set has led me to believe that those two people don't sit down in a room and just have good stories that they just share and they just pass the time with 3 hours. Like that's not happening with those two. And I think that's fine. And I think maybe they're a little bit hard-headed in their own very unique way. And if there is any sort of bad blood for Alabama, I almost wonder if that works in favor of Alabama in this one, because last year I thought Signetti went into that Ohio State game and that Notre Dame game trying to have this, hey, I'm going to show you everything that we've built and I'm going to show you why I'm so much better than you think I am. What did he say before the Notre Dame game? Like, we don't just beat top 25 teams. We, kick their what. I think that Bama has a really good chance of being able to have Signetti kind of get in his own head with this one and maybe overthink some of this stuff. And maybe they're a little bit too aggressive. And hey, you probably shouldn't go for this fourth down here when you've been a little bit, ineffective in some of these key down and distances. And maybe that plays into Alabama's hand in this one. All of these circumstances, I think will play out in real time and we will be able to gauge all of this. Will, can I say this? I probably buried the lead a little bit.
Go ahead.
I never thought this day would come from my alma mater. I've been very vocal about that. I've probably also not put enough time into thinking about the potential dynamic of watching an SEC team with a path to a national championship in play and knowing that they're going against my school and knowing that there are probably 100 Alabama fans for every one Indiana fan who listens to this show. Like, I can admit that. Okay. So I'll say this. I want to see the school that I graduated from win a national championship. Sue me. Okay.
I was waiting for you to come to terms with that. I figured this might be the time to really have that crossroads because it's against a team that you cover. So you, for once in your life, will be rooting for a team in a game you watch.
Yes. But here's what I'll say. Like, if you just give me the buttons, you say, Connor, we've got 8 teams left in this college football playoff field. Here are 8 buttons. Pick one of the, just push a button and that team gets to win a national championship. Yes, I'm pushing the Indiana button. Okay. If that makes me biased, so be it. What I will also add to that is I am not a diehard Indiana football fan. I have never had a bad day in my life as a result of Indiana football because for my entire existence and relationship with this program, it has been either journalistic or just apathetic. Okay. So it won't hurt me if Indiana loses this football game. It would be cool to see Indiana win the Rose Bowl and go on to win a national championship and do all of these things that could have only happened in a video game in a previous life. I will not show up here devastated if IU loses this game. Okay? I will not do that. And if there are borderline things, you know that I will try and keep it as objective as humanly possible. I think anybody that's listened to the show for any length of time knows that I try and call it like I see it. You could say that I might have vested interest in this one in ways I never have. I will not be that guy that is bitter and salty if my team loses. Okay. I've watched enough of Alabama to know that there is definitely a scenario in which Bama could win this game. I think if they play this game 10 times, I think Bama probably wins 3 times. I really do. Do I think this will be one of these 3 times? I don't. I think IU wins a thriller 27-24. Call me a homer, but you can't say that I'm emotionally hedging.
It's so funny, right? Because the allegations that you've been defending against since you got decided down south are, oh, he's a Yankee, he's from the north, he has vested interest. And again, that couldn't be farther from the truth. I'll call out, your biases or whatever they would be. They haven't seen you in a Publix, right? You're a fully converted Southerner, right? So at the end of the day, it's funny that you've been facing those allegations, and now we see a perfect storm in which no one, the Heisman Foundation, nobody would blame you for rooting for Indiana in this situation. But I do have one question for you. At what point in the journey are you breaking out the candy cane stripes on the podcast? Is that going to be semifinal, championship? What are we thinking?
I don't have a pair of the pinstripe pants. I
You
don't.
better get some. Hurry.
I think that there was a moment senior year of college in which I thought, do I get these now? The problem, you don't wear those really to football games. They're more of a basketball game staple. And I had a moment junior year where I thought about getting them. And then I thought, they're like $80. Am I really going to spend $80 on a pair of pants at this point in my life when I've got like $20 to my name? Can't do it. I had like $200 to my name, but couldn't do it. Couldn't justify it. So I never got the candy stripe pants, but there'll be a whole lot of people in the Rose Bowl rocking those exact pants.
I'm going to hit you with what you hit me with last time. You didn't answer my question. When are you rocking the candy stripe pants?
There, the window is passed. The window has passed.
Insane. Wow. Now you're bad luck.
If here's what I'll say. If Indiana basketball makes it to a Final Four, I'm buying some pinstripe pants. Okay? How about that? Or
Okay, fine.
if Indiana makes a national championship in college football, I will cover this game in the press box in Miami, and I will wear my candy stripe pants, and I will say, "What's up, guys? What's going on? Everybody here
Just not to
professionally."
get yourself some boxers and just wear them low key. Go, undercover superhero.
What if I just get a tattoo instead? Would that be good?
That would be fire. Yeah. Anyway, back to the game at hand, right? There's a couple of things about this Indiana team that do make them uniquely interesting for Bama. Now we've talked about we've talked about our guy Kane Womack and the swarm defense. Okay. And some of the things, you look at the amount of ways that they try to beat you. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys with over about 150 rushing yards, right? And then on the other side, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 7, 8 guys with over about 150 receiving yards, right? So you have a ton of targets that have gotten involved in this offense. But the thing that's scary about this defense, or for this defense, that's not where they've struggled. They would love to spread the ball around. The Swarm defense is like one of the best in the country at that. Where you start to worry is this FBS leading adjusted yards gained per pass attempt for Fernando Mendoza. Where you start to worry is the deep threat. And we saw that. We saw that in the Big Ten championship game, right? I got Charlie Becker that was making. He was with the exciting whites for
Made the
sure.
biggest play of the year, that third down play. I sent to Marler, like which we'll get to. I think it won him the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah. And so that being said, what's so weird about Indiana is they haven't shrunk from the moment at any point in time, and that's what you look for. Are you a Cinderella story? Are you a good story, or are you a kind of like contender? Right. And when it comes to that, it's like, do you really believe in yourself in these big moments? You just hit on it. The big moments of their season are these insane bang bang plays where they go for the jugular, and that's what you don't want to see for the cute Cinderella story. You want to see them have a bunch of yards against air. And, you kind of go back to like some of the Oklahoma teams where they had these big, gaudy numbers and they play Alabama and they get punched in the mouth and they get scared. But then, they've already gotten punched in the mouth. They've already had, the game against Notre Dame. They've already beaten Oregon. They've already beaten Ohio State. And so Alabama is just a little bit of extra rage on top of that. But what's so funny about this, and see if you agree with this, right? Saban spent his entire career combating emotion, really, keeping guys within the boat, all on one page, rowing, as PJ Fleck would say. It's almost like when this Bama team is at their best, it's weaponized arrogance. It's like, I'm going to beat the bleep out of you. And I don't care why. I don't care how. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to go for these aggressive fourth downs that would make Nick Saban kind of shudder. I'm going to, again, go for the jugular. I'm going to make insane circus catches. I'm going to put dudes in the dirt. I'm going to do risky plays, and they're going to work out for me. Does that make sense?
My only counter to that is, don't you think they showed up with that mentality against Georgia too? And it
I,
still led
yeah.
to Georgia in the SEC championship, not Georgia the first time.
The first time, the second time. Right. No, you're right. Okay. And I promise I'm not talking about Indiana's talent because that's such a cop out. Like, they have gone far and above. Talking about the Kent State transfers leading the Big Ten and
It's so
TFLs.
weird. Will, you're hitting on something that's really important here. I've almost thrown away. You guys haven't heard me reference the 24/7 talent composite rankings the way that we used to, just because how do you truly dissect that when you've got a guy coming in from Kent State that's all of a sudden, or this guy from James Madison, Elijah Surratt's a former James Madison receiver, and all of a sudden you're like, he's one of the 5 best receivers in college football. Like, how do I say that that's definitively, not as good as a 5-star here? It's got those waters have been very muddied, and I don't even feel the need to reference them in the college football playoff. And I promise you, that's not just an Indiana thing, but I think we've seen a lot of other examples where, like Texas Tech, who we're going to get to in a second here, where you just kind of have to throw that out a little bit, and it's almost like, what's your interpretation of talent?
Absolutely. And guys grow over the course of a season, too. I mean, these are kids at the end of the day. They're physically growing throughout the course of the year. I remember looking at Jared Verse. He came from, I believe, Albany, and just going, maybe everybody was just wrong about this guy. And then, of course, he goes to wins, defensive rookie of the year in the NFL. Same deal here. Maybe I was just wrong about dude from Kent State, and that's fine, but it does. We talk about Bud Elliott, dunking on JMU and all that. It's like, well, when talent ends up not mattering sometimes, it kind of hurts your argument because Indiana has taken some of those same routes to get here. So I say that to say, okay, these are two teams that I think have successfully weaponized arrogance. These are two teams that believe in themselves to an irrational stand to say, we're Indiana, we're going to go win the Big Ten. We're Alabama, we're down 17 at Oklahoma. We're going to be singing mini men because we know we're going to win. And so this is just another, I know, that committee was just sipping some tea when they made all these matchups this year. They really went with their hearts here, and I love that about them because they created such vitriol in these matchups. And so that being said, I have Indiana here. I think Indiana is going to, I'd say, what's your over-under on this one? Yours.
My
Total.
actual,
Yeah.
I would probably mid to high 40s. And Indiana's won low scoring games against Ohio State. They won a low scoring game at Iowa. The game against Oregon felt a little bit more low scoring, but I mean, IU ended up winning that game by double digits, and they had, the pick 6 in there. So I don't know that tells the full story, but that's kind of what's gotten them to this point, is that even in these games in which they haven't been up 42 to nothing at halftime, they can grind out a win. And they've been able to kind of, win these more slog type games in which just need to be clutch in some of these key moments on the stretch. You just need to find that opportunity. So, yeah, probably like mid to high 40s, I would say.
I'd say 20, 27. Indiana. I could see a 24, 27 type vibe. And this is a hilarious sentence I'm about to say, but I believe it. Ryan Williams versus Charlie Becker.
Would
Hilarious
we say
sentence.
that? Would we say that? Is
But if
that
they need to get Ryan Williams going because they have the name brand Ryan Williams is Charlie Becker. What they've asked Ryan Williams to do, he's been better at. So hitting on those deep plays against a very staunch, well coached defense, I think Indiana is better at that, and I think that's why they're going to win this game.
Yeah, if Ryan Williams is all of a sudden catching deep passes, that changes everything about the complexion of this game. It just does. And if all of a sudden you see that guy make a couple of big time plays in space and he gets his confidence back, that is just monumental for Alabama's chances to be able to win this game. No disrespect to Jeremy Bernard, no disrespect to Lottie Brooks, and these guys that have just been really, really good for this Alabama team this year. But if all of a sudden that element on the back end is opened up for Alabama, it just kind of changes your offensive ceiling. I think they very desperately need it. It opens up the run game if you're able to do that, of course, as well. So, wow, we're both picking Indiana to win a football game. And we'll get to Marler's prediction, but let's just say Marler's not predicting Alabama to win this one 28-3. Okay. That was mean to say 28-3. I shouldn't have said that. A lot of Atlanta people listening to that. I didn't need to say that. That was an accident, Freudian slip. I
That's
have
a
no ill
Christmas
will.
present for me. At least you're ducking in somebody else's team.
I'm sorry. No slip whatsoever. The only thing that could make me mad that could happen from this game is if Indiana loses and all of a sudden people are like, Indiana should have never been in the playoff. This is why, like,
Nobody's
that's
doing
what I'll
that.
roll
When
my
they
eyes
beat
at.
Ohio State, that's where it really. Oregon was like, this is your last opportunity. Ohio State was like, you're a hater, you're stupid if you're doubting Indiana now.
If anyone plays the fraud card against IU, I have the right to go scorched earth on them and
There
not
you go.
have the homer card thrown at me. Just saying.
Candy striped kata.
All right, Orange Bowl. Oregon, 2.5-point favorites against Texas Tech. The over-under I have is 1 fourth quarter pass attempt for Baron Morton. Uno, 1. That's right. He has 19 fourth quarter pass attempts all year. That is Texas Tech's starting quarterback. All right, and I realize he missed 2 games. Still talking about just 19 fourth quarter pass attempts. That's 22nd in the Big 12. The Big 12 has 16 teams, Will. There are several Big 12 teams who have multiple quarterbacks who have more fourth quarter pass attempts than Baron Morton, the starting quarterback of the team that won the conference title. Colorado has 3 guys in that spot with more fourth quarter pass attempts than Texas Tech's QB1.
That's dominance. It doesn't exactly help you
Yeah.
here, but it's a great, I would love that to be true about my team.
KJ Jackson has 28 fourth quarter pass attempts, and he was Arkansas's backup this year. Okay? That's what we're talking about. That's the perspective that needs to be kept in mind. Baron Morton's been good, and he's part of the reason why this Texas Tech team has been so dominant. But it's wild that this team has been that dominant that it hasn't dealt with a second half deficit in a game that he has started. Obviously, they lost the Arizona State game, a game in which he wasn't starting. For what it's worth, Morton is different than someone like Julian Sand, who is, Julian Sand's in year 1 as a starter. Morton has 211 career pass attempts in the fourth quarter. But again, I question what that's going to look like when it's tight, if it's tight late, and he's got a different OC than he's had in those previous fourth quarter pass attempts, previous years with Mac Leftwich running that offense. What does it look like when it's 3rd and 7 and you're down a touchdown and you've got a Dan Lanning defense that's barreling down on you? Where are you able to turn? Because they distribute it pretty evenly with that Texas Tech offense. It's in a way kind of like what Indiana tries to do. And their leading receiver, go figure, is actually former Florida receiver Caleb Douglas, who's a guy that we probably brought up a few times on the show. Could have some big moments in this one if Oregon's second half defense is not corrected after what we saw against JMU. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Dan Lanning has 7 losses as a head coach. 7. Okay? Think about that. In year 4 as a head coach, he's got 7 losses. I believe he's treating the second half against JMU like a loss. Whenever the hype video comes out that Oregon puts together, and Lord knows they are as good at it as anyone in this business, whenever that post game, like, hey, this is the 6-minute movie that they essentially produced for this game, there will be something in there about how bad they were defensively in the second half against JMU and how they are going to make a statement against Texas Tech. I
How do
think
you
this is,
channel hatred for Texas Tech, especially as Oregon? Like the only thing that you can really hate about Texas Tech is they bought their team, and you're Oregon. Like you have Grateful Dead Nike uniforms.
yeah, and in a weird way, nobody's going to make this comp, but Oregon kind of did what Texas Tech did 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's almost like yeah, they were the trailblazers of this exact thing.
Oregon built an entire brand based on uniform combinations and hoping that in a day and age of college football video games getting more popular and merchandising being more readily available at all these different places, it essentially built a brand based on that. And it has led them to this place now where every single year you feel like they can compete for a national championship in ways that they couldn't even under Mario Cristobal. And so for those, if anyone's sitting here scoffing at Texas Tech and you don't like the Cody Campbell model, like, I get it, but there have been previous iterations of this, just not necessarily in this exact way. So, like, what was once modern is now something that we've just come to accept. And it's so entrenched in what Oregon is that we just kind of assume that, hey, this is how they built their foundation and we're okay with it. But Texas Tech, because it's happening right now, there's some opposition to it. Now, I don't think it's full sale opposition. I think there are people that very much understand that they are trying to capitalize on this very unique crossroads. And when college football spending is a total free for all, and credit to them, they've been able to do that to get to this place. But it would be funny to see some argue for one thing and against another with these two teams.
Yeah, and I assume every Texas team is kind of has been historically paying guys, and so I'm sure we'll get a ton of people who say, "Oh, you don't know about the old dot dot dot," because every Texas fan base will like point at each other and be like, "Oh, SMU, A&M, they're all paying players." But what's kind of crazy is like it feels like Texas Tech waited until it was legal. I mean, that was kind of the difference. And, Oregon, or sorry, Nike is so involved in basketball that I'm just willing to say that they're at least ambivalent to paying guys under the table. If you're Oregon, again, you really can't hate Texas Tech for that because they waited till, it was legal, right? Whereas, again, I'm not going to say Oregon's like paying players or whatever. I just know that Nike has done it previously and they were able to kind of buy their way into college football's elite. So yeah, I wonder what that slander is like. I mean, no championships, newer teams, newer kind of like conference affiliation for Oregon. I want to see. I'm going to hop on that Twitter and see what the slander is looking like for them.
I have a dumb question, and you could search this real quick, and I'll filibuster during it. This might be really, really dumb, and I'm hand up if this is just an off the cuff question that should not be asked on this show. Is Cody Campbell richer than Phil Knight? Net worth. Because I understand Phil Knight is Nike. Okay. I fully get that. Cody Campbell is crazy rich. So that oil money, I don't ever, and that's maybe just my way of trying to pay respect to oil money and to never discount what it could potentially mean in a bank account. Phil Knight is probably more wealthy than Cody Campbell, but would I bet my life on that? I don't think I would.
I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to need to do a little bit deep research, but let's keep going.
Well, research will stay on that one. This Texas Tech defense, whether it's been bought or not, whatever, it's really good. It's really, really good. They've allowed less than 4 yards per play. They're second in the country there. I don't, however, think Texas Tech's defense has faced an offense like what Will Stein is going to bring to the table. That's right, new Kentucky coach Will Stein. Dante Moore is big time, man. Dante Moore is big time. And I think he just got outplayed by Fernando Mendoza in that game against Indiana. And we suddenly just kind of wrote him off and forgot how big time he was. But Oregon has got to this place with just one loss, in part because, yes, they didn't have to face Ohio State. Their schedule was still put them in some tough spots down the stretch. They fended off USC that entire game. There was never a moment in which I thought Oregon was going to lose that game. That comeback against Iowa was so unbelievably gritty. And I think in the conditions, in the context of knowing what it meant to mean that game, you need to understand some of the plays that Dante Moore made. And yes, the Penn State win didn't age as well as it could have. He still made so many clutch throws in that football game that I just kind of think we've forgotten that this guy has really been able to rise to the occasion. He's not as decorated as some of these other quarterbacks in the field, but I just trust him. And I think this is hey, we should have spent a whole lot more time talking about Dante Moore type of game. So I think the Ducks make the plays late. I think that inexperience in the fourth quarter this season with this version of Texas Tech's offense, I think maybe they can't quite mount that comeback. So I'm going Oregon to win this one 27-24.
Phil Knight is at least 15 and at most 40 times richer than Cody Campbell.
I should have known that, but respect to oil money. Never disrespect oil money.
If you guys want to be radicalized, and actually one of the more radicalizing things for me was the Grateful Dead Nike uniforms, where I go, this is about free love and essentially like a work, what's it called, like a commune, like Grateful Dead show, and now you're turning this into merch, like, but go look at the list of the richest people on earth, and then go yearly, and about around COVID, it just goes zzz, and it just stays there. So like the Phil Knight, it's kind of like the Elon Musk, Phil Knight, Bill Gates, that class of people is just getting so much richer. So I think that median is between these two people, where if you're over a certain level, you own countries now, I guess. But yeah, that being said, that hasn't gotten Oregon to win many playoff games against FBS teams, or not FBS teams, but Power 4 or 5 teams over the years. I do think that this is just a dream matchup, a dream path for Oregon thus far, where they can kind of get that off their back against JMU and then play a Texas Tech team that is green, in the era of paying players that at their top, as we've just proven, if they want to go band for band, Phil Knight will still beat them, And so it's kind of like the disciple of the paper check model. So yeah, I got Oregon in this one. Could be big. I think Texas Tech just isn't quite there yet. Interestingly enough, Baron Morton's been there forever, right? And
Yes.
this might be an opportunity. We think about this as like a bought team, but this guy is a guy who's done it the right way. Now, unfortunately, I'm about to slander that because this might be an opportunity for maybe a Texas-born DJ Lagway. They've been good. They've been program guys, building it the right way. But this might be year one where you go back year two and go, yeah, we got some freak quarterback coming in for a year or two, and he's just going to elevate us. Whereas
Sorsby from Cincinnati is kind of the one everybody's expecting. Like his girlfriend, I think, is already like committed to Texas Tech as well. So those dots have been connected for sure.
You're so right. I remember the girlfriend thing as you say it. That's such a tell, right? Because it's like, how are we going to make this work long distance? We're already adults, Like it's like we're already adults. This isn't like we're 18, 19. Like, and this doesn't. This is probably my future. Future. So yeah, that being said, I think this is kind of the proof of concept that lets them go back to the coffers and become Oregon one day, but I think we see that live.
This is pretty important for the Big 12, I think. Big 12 was one playoff victory. One. And this is year 12, and it was Michigan. TCU. Yeah. And that was followed by 65-7 wings in the fourth quarter. That I think that matters. And I think in a year in which, yes, you've been a one bid league, but you've been respectable. You're trying to gain that respect. And if all of a sudden you can't stay on the field with Oregon and you lose this game when you've had your most dominant conference champ in a while. I mean, they were more dominant than what Texas was in 23 because, obviously when Texas lost to Oklahoma, it wasn't like they were without Quinn Ewers. Now, Quinn Ewers had 3 picks in that game in Red River, and that ultimately cost them. That was their lone regular season loss. You could make a real case that even TCU wasn't as dominant because TCU lost in the Big 12 championship to Kansas State. And it was a team that, coming into the postseason were kind of like, were they playing with fire a little bit too much? Like they literally won on a fire drill field goal in that game against Baylor. Like they have just been the team that's kind of thrived amidst chaos. And Texas Tech has been like, no, we're above all of that. We have imposed our will, game in, game out. Give us BYU again. We don't care. We'll take care of business. And I think for what you're trying to sell, if you're Brett Mark, the Big 12 commissioner, of come to the Big 12, we are America's conference. We can turn a team that's loaded with portal guys into a true championship contender. You're right. This is the proof of concept. And you need to be able to take care of business in a game like this. It means a ton, I think, for the Big 12. And Texas Tech is doing so much of the heavy lifting. But I think they end up just a little bit short. I predicted the same final score for this one as I did for the Rose Bowl. That's probably not a good omen.
Really quick, Connor, as a guy who has said, bowl games don't matter, I'm actually going to make an exception there, the exception that proves the rule. I think that Pop Tart Bowl actually mattered. Hilarious sentence again, because one thing about Haynes King is that he really does care about those bowl games. So we
Oh
kind of
yeah.
saw that last year against Pavia, right? Where like the ACC and the Big 12 are fighting for, the third place conference, right? And so you look at a Georgia Tech who is in the hunt all year. You look at a BYU who is in the hunt all year. And especially with Notre Dame kind of opting out of that whole thing, I think that BYU being able to come back and win that game and only having a loss to Texas Tech twice, I think that kind of says, and again, the interest that Sataki got from a Penn State, stuff like that, I think that goes to say, okay, not only are they the team that has gotten the bye, but they've earned it by beating a pretty legitimate team here. And you have your Arizona States with Kenny Dillingham, who was a very hot name in this cycle, playoff participant last year, as far as playing the Peach Bowl. So I actually think that those two teams kind of running parallel, and it's kind of like an Oregon Washington vibe from 23, where it's like they each legitimize each other by only one losing to the other. And so I think the Big 12 has made some serious hay this year, and I think just not being run out of the building in this game would be enough for me to say, hey, you're ahead of the ACC. How about that?
Yeah, you could say that. I think winning a playoff game and beating a team like Oregon, when everybody's saying right now the Big Ten has the most championship contenders, I think that I think there's a big difference between close loss and getting to the semifinals and having a chance to play in a national championship, you know? So, and existing in a post Texas Oklahoma world, that matters too. That's what they've been trying to establish the last couple of years. And I don't necessarily blame them, but
You know what's
Oregon,
crazy, man? I just realized this. It's kind of a duh, but it really, dude, they're fighting after the same player pool. Duh. Duh, they're fighting after the same player pool. If money is your number one thing, you're picking between these two schools. So this is a dream matchup for Texas Tech because it goes, hey, you don't have to go fly out all the way out there to Oregon. You can come stay here and get your bread.
yeah, just stay local in Lubbock, Texas, of course,
Beautiful scenery.
close to everyone, near major airports. Sure, why not?
They're going to disappear me. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, Sugar Bowl. Miami, Ohio State. Ohio State's a 9.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 2.5. I've still got this. Ryan Day play calls. I was gonna say, how do you like me now? Play calls. I don't really like combining Toby Keith, Ryan Day. He already had his Toby Keith season last year, his Toby Keith postseason run, I should say. So not necessarily that same vibe, but you know what I'm saying. He's calling plays in this one, which was a significant development because Brian Hartline, he is staying on board, but just as receivers coach, he's been the offensive play caller this entire season, and he is now off to USF to replace Alex Golish. Ryan Day says, I don't want to worry about you juggling both of these very important jobs. Perhaps he watched Colin Klein struggle against that Miami defense as he's juggling two jobs. Maybe.
He's like, you know what? I've already seen this movie before, bro. You're good. Get on out of here. It's fine.
I wonder. I really wonder if there was at least one moment in which Ryan Day said, because unless I'm getting the timeline wrong, like that decision came after the college football playoff, or at least that announcement did. They could tell us what they want with that. But the sort of the sliding doors butterfly effect of this is that USF was gonna hire Colin Klein, and then Kansas State, let's just say that job became available. We can say that.
I mean, do you think there was like a moment, like he's like Parlai's walking in like an hour late, he's got like a pizza stain on his shirt. Dave's like, you know what, man? Just get out of here. You're not locked in. Like, I wonder like what that interaction was like. We're kind of midweek or mid-process. He's like, don't worry about it, bro. Because I'm sure he went through a couple of practices, like planning to coach the game.
And everybody always goes back to the Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin dynamic is, well, this ended up working out. You can get away with this. Did it work out? I mean, Bama didn't win the national championship.
I don't think that worked out. I think that he got like low key kind of let go there, after the Washington game.
Yeah. We'll play the results. We absolutely will. But yeah, it's just weird that it worked out this way with Colin Klein being set to go to USF, or at least that's what it was looking like. And then all of a sudden he's
Kansas
not.
State.
No, he was set to go to USF.
Brian
They were going
Hartline.
to hire him. No. Let me explain this.
Okay.
Colin Klein
Sorry.
was set to accept the USF job. And then when Kansas State became available, he takes that job instead. Ergo, Brian Hartline becomes the USF head coach. They clearly wanted to hire an offensive play caller. They had one in Alex Golish. So they're like, Brian Hartline, you're doing it really well. We need some of these ridiculously good South Florida receivers to stay local. And we think you have a really good chance based on your track record of doing that. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I was connecting those dots here.
My bad. You're so right.
Yeah.
And like I was like, it's so weird to have that situation back to back where two guys that were lined up for the same job. I was like, clearly he's misspeaking. It might be.
No, yeah. Everything in this sport is connected somehow. That's the moral of the story here. Ryan Day was Ohio State's play caller until he hired Chip Kelly in 2024. Seen as this, okay, I'm all in. I'm willing to put my ego aside. I need to go out there and win a championship type of move. And we can look back now and say, yes, that move absolutely got you over the hump. And it was so important in Ohio State's 2024 arc, whatever you want to call it. It would be fascinating to see if Ryan Day went back to the well and got a suddenly available Chip Kelly to come back and call plays for him. TBD on that whole situation. As for this game, though, Ryan Day is calling plays for Julian Sayin for the first time. And you could say, well, yeah, Ryan Day's part of these offensive meetings. He's probably got a huge say in play calling. I get all that. I really do. It could be nothing, or it could be the exact type of thing that if Ohio State fans, or if Ohio State loses, Ohio State fans are not going to react kindly to it, especially knowing this is the most lopsided spread of any of these quarterfinal matchups. Is Ryan Day auditioning for himself? Is he? You know?
That would be all time. How do you like me now? If you could call plays on the way like a back to back, and then you're like, I'm gonna hire whoever the bleep I want. And by the way, Matt Patricia's my defensive coordinator. Just completely, Marshawn Lynch grabbing the lower area there as you go into the end zone. Like, I'm gonna hire my brother to be my special teams coach, and I don't want to hear anybody saying bleep about it.
If you win, it's all people care about. If he is auditioning for himself to be his own next play caller, it's kind of like when Jim convinced Dwight to compete for his own assistant to the regional manager position after Dwight takes over as manager, season 9, spoiler alert. Not sure who plays Jim in this scenario. I'm sure that Miami is very likely going to have a decent shot, at least, of being as tough of a defensive line as any that Ohio State has seen so far. And that includes Indiana. Okay. I think that Miami defensive line is that good with Ruben Bain. 7 sacks they had against A&M, 9 TFLs. That's not just Marcel Reed. Okay. I know that's convenient. It's not all Marcel Reed. Ohio State's offensive line is really the only thing that you can look at and go, hey, that's not an obvious, overwhelming strength. It's good, but it's not as good as it was last year. And that's kind of a wild thought considering they've only allowed 11 sacks all year. But it is the one unit that you would say, they could definitely stand to improve there. And if they lose a game, that being the thing that is their undoing, I could see that. I definitely could. But Julian Sayin has been unreal under pressure. Very likely because he has the ultimate cheat code, knowing that he's got Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate to throw the ball to. Plenty of days in which I think to myself, I think Carnell Tate is the best receiver in college football. That's a problem for Miami because unlike the A&M game, when you had an inaccurate quarterback playing in windy conditions who couldn't take advantage of that mismatch in the secondary, that's not going to be the case with Julian Sayin. I think this is the type of game in which Ohio State starts off somewhat slow and maybe it leads like 10-7 at halftime. And we're kind of going this Ryan Day play caller thing. We sure that's the move? Can Chip Kelly get on a plane right now? Can he make this happen? And you can hear all of these narratives that are forming. And then the second half, Ohio State figures it out, dominates in every way. That puts Miami in too many of these obvious passing situations, takes Mark Fletcher Jr. out of the game after he was incredible against A&M. I'm going to say Ohio State wins this one going away 31-14.
It's upsetting to me how unslanderable Ohio State is. I'm realizing because it doesn't matter if they lose this game for Ryan Day at all. It doesn't matter for his legacy because he already won one. He's already been part of another one. It's like he, for all the SEC hatred, like from the SEC, Ohio State always loses to the SEC, like Ohio State frauds every year. They have the best roster. They've now put together like some pretty Impressive champions.
That's dead after the last year plus that he's had, including the Texas game this year.
Yes, and it's so frustrating to me that I can't dunk on him if he just scores 3 points in this game because you can't. Like, you got to be fair. Like, it doesn't matter. Oh no, they didn't win back to back. Like it sucks. I need them to really struggle next year so I can get these jokes off. But that being said, I think they're going to be able to create a little bit more havoc than A&M was. Again, not going to go into why with A&M, who was playing at home. I think that a neutral site game, while you may think it would benefit Miami, I think that it's going to give Carson Beck some more confidence, which I think is a negative thing. I think that he knew with all those screaming fans in his face that he couldn't make mistakes. Think of this game, he's got his new girlfriend. He's already won a playoff game. He's cooking. Boom, there's a DB. Boom, there's a DB. And so, yeah, I think this is going to be a big Matt Patricia game. Oh, God, what a funny team. This is going to be a big Matt Patricia game just because, he happens to be there in front of Carson Beck. And so that being said, it creates a situation where exactly what you said, Ryan Day can start slow, go, hey, wait a minute. I do have Bo Jackson on this team. Obviously, different Bo Jackson they're not related to, but it's like, hey, I could just kind of hand the ball off and let give Carson Beck the football and see what happens. So it would be hard for me to envision Miami winning this game. It would be very funny for them to now dethrone like an SEC team and then the defending champion. Now Miami is like the most back any team has ever been. But I think there's just too much to like about Ohio State. Like, talking about like the cover athlete curse, man, the fact that, Jeremiah Smith is like leading the Big Ten in catches this year is so funny. Conversely to Ryan Williams, who's just struggling to get catches in games. As good as Cardell Tate is, he's got about half, 48 to 80 of the amount of catches that Jeremiah Smith has. So credit to them for effectively using their personnel. It does help to have your receiver coach be involved in the offense to that degree to go, hey, that guy's really good. We should really get the ball to that guy. So that being said, there are just too many cheat codes with this Ohio State team. Again, handing the ball off, I think Miami, great defensive front, but I think it's something that they need to stick with, especially given that you don't really trust your quarterback in these spots, especially with a new play caller. But again, if you just spam the B button, it can't be too bad for you.
Yeah, I tend to think that matters a lot. And maybe Ohio State's going to run into a secondary that can not necessarily have the advantage against Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, but at least not be totally exposed on the back end. And I think there are too many of those opportunities available. Like whenever Julian Sayin hits his back foot, look out. Just look out because he's been really good under pressure, but it's you're just waiting for those receivers to be open and you're thinking to yourself, how in the world is it fair that Jeremiah Smith can get the separation that he does and Carnell Tate can make the contested catches that he does? That combination is it's lethal. And speaking of Jeremiah Smith, by the way, friend of the show, Ari Wasserman asked this question that just is the ultimate, maybe one of the single biggest kicks to the nuts that Miami fans have had in the last 20 years. He asked the question, Jeremiah Smith, ahead of media days at the Cotton Bowl, that if Miami had been playing in games like this growing up, would Jeremiah Smith, a South Florida native, would he have gone to Miami? He's like, yeah, probably. That hurts.
Ari's such a troll. Shahad, too. I love some of the guys that we've kind of had on here. You see him on Twitter. It's like, you're using this platform correctly, brother. That's the question I want to know right there.
It's a good question, and I think it's a fair answer, right? If you're in that spot and you have a program as close to you as cool as Miami is, and if they had continued that, yeah, there's no doubt. Why would you want to leave a situation like that? And you could make the case. Look at Ohio State's receivers the last 6-7 years, whatever, since Brian Hartline's been there. That obviously sells itself, but there's something to be said for big time premier program, local, even in this day and age of NIL, in which that would have absolutely appealed to Jeremiah Smith. And now there's probably just one person out there who's thinking, oh, wait a minute. If Miami wins this game, could Jeremiah Smith leave and team with Malachi Tony and form the best receiver duo? No, I think Carnell Tate is just as good as more polished than Malachi Tony at this stage of his career. But there's one person out there that had that thought after seeing Ari's question.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens is if they win this game, Michael Irvin is just deployed to the neighborhoods in Miami, and he just shows up banging on doors like reverse Santa Claus. Come to the U! Come to the U! He's got a belt. He's just banging on people's doors. He's got the 24/7 like rankings. He's like, hey, hey, and they just get 3 commits overnight. They get guys in the portal because he won't stop. He won't leave people alone to come to the U.
Speaking of Michael Irvin, we need a list as consumers of a lot of football. A list of things that, just like you have on Twitter, we can mute from a broadcast. I'm not saying the broadcast has to take it out entirely because there's a market for everything if they're showing it, but an opt out button. If I want on my YouTube TV to opt out of every single time they show Michael Irvin, I should be able to. If I want to opt out of seeing Diego Pavi's mom hit the Heisman pose every single time, I should be able to opt out of it. I think there are more than enough options in this day and age in which we can have alternate angles. We've got all 22s. Make that happen because a lot of people are hitting the Michael Irvin button if it's available.
Here's the problem though. He's verging on being part of the game. He's legitimately on getting a penalty with some of the stuff he does. He could contact the ref. He could tackle a guy that's running down the sidelines. So I think we just need to keep tabs on him. Like I think keeping a camera on him for later review is probably a smart point at this point in Miami's run, where he's really getting fired up and getting a little bit of a little bit of some stuff maybe in terms of he's got his coffee in the morning. Let's say I think that jazzed up Michael Irvin is something you got to just get eyes on.
What's the Ari Gold line in Entourage? He's like, with what I'm paying for these seats, I'll shoot a 3 if I want to.
That's that's the thing. He's a legend. He's that type of like Shannon Sharp, where you're like, hey, what can you really say to him? Get off my television. Is what you could say.
I think Michael Irvin hit Mario Cristobal with like a very aggressive hug after the A&M game, harder than probably anybody's hit Mario Cristobal in his post-playing career.
Since he played, he's had DNs that hit him softer than that. Yeah.
Mario Cristobal has probably hit tackling sleds that have been less contact than what Michael Irvin got him with after that game.
And good for him. He suffered for 20 plus years. That's the thing. They're a suffering fan base, but they'll continue it in this game, I think.
Yeah, between that and the Cowboys, poor Michael Irvin. No wonder he's so fired up, man. Goodness gracious. All right, let's kick it to Marler, a voice that OG listeners of this show will absolutely know. Great to be able to talk some Bama stuff with him ahead of the Rose Bowl. Marler's got a million things going on with he's got like 6 different SEC teams he's covering at this point. Goodness gracious. But we get Bama Marler, and not like Bama, I'm losing my mind Marler, like middle of the third quarter, and they still can't get a first down carry. Like objective Bama Marler, I think you get in a full dose here.
I was texting him the other day, and I was like, what's funny, man? Like, you're the only person I've seen that wears like fandom for 3 SEC fan bases, because he has the South Carolina podcast too.
The South Carolina podcast, doing LouisianaSports.net. Yeah, like he's got a lot of eggs in the fire, so he could be called biased. You can call Marler biased in just about every single way.
Right. Like, that's the thing, is it's unfair because he lives in my home state of Louisiana now in Baton Rouge. He's doing great work for them, but he's getting LSU homer, South Carolina homer, Georgia homer is the 4th one, actually.
Oh, yeah,
sometimes because he's from Atlanta. And then I was texting about that the other day. I was like, it's got to be frustrating when someone's just like, oh, well, I don't listen to you. You're a Georgia homer. It's like, you're just upsetting all the right people. If they got to go to your non-existent fandom. So that's a great intro. Here's Marler.
Yeah, here is Marler. He's got a story about that, by the way, that we will get to at the end of this interview. So yes, here is Chris Marler. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. Can I call you a guest?
That sucks.
Former co-host.
Yeah. I mean, either one works. It's good to be back. The new logo rules.
It's Chris Marler, by the way.
Oh yeah,
that's the guy. Thank you. Shout out to our guy Fraser who put that stuff together. Yeah, look, it's been a minute since you have been on these specific airwaves, and I've always said for years, if Indiana and Alabama are ever facing off in a Rose Bowl quarterfinal game where Indiana's a touchdown favorite, you got to come back on. And you know what? The prophecy, it existed.
The stars aligned. Yeah, I don't love that you spoke it into existence. I would have loved to come back on, but not under these circumstances. Because like you and I have talked about this off air. It's just insane that this is the world that we're in right now. Like if you would have said this 5 years ago, we would have both like been like, what are you even like? What could you possibly be talking about?
I was even thinking about how DeBoer would have processed that. Like back when he left Indiana after 2019, he gets his first FBS head coaching opportunity. Do you think you could have told him at that point, hey, you're going to get the Alabama job in year 2, you're going to go face this team in the Rose Bowl, and oh, by the way, you're going to be a touchdown underdog, and it's going to be the team that you're leaving? No way.
No, you would have had to like. I wonder what the guessing game and the assumptions would have been from him as to all the things that would have had to happen for that to like take place. Because in that mindset, you're like, well, man, what, like something catastrophic must have happened at Alabama. And it kind of did with Saban leaving, but it's not like there's been a huge fall off in talent, like at least from like the 247 standpoint. And it's wild to me because it's like Signetti, it's not like he went to the portal and spent Texas Tech money. He got a great quarterback, and then he brought a bunch of JMU players, and they immediately went to the Big Ten. Just kind of shows you more about the Big Ten than anything.
There it is.
That and then I mean he's such a I gotta remember that we gotta keep it PG-13 here. He's such a jerk, but he's so good, and it's like it's hard not to pull for Indiana. I was a pretty adamant, like staunchly opposed to their schedule stuff, just because of what he said
Last
in the
year, you're saying.
offseason. That pissed me off like more because it was just
It
like
pissed me off.
it was
Yeah.
like blatant gaslighting. We were all just like and Big Ten fans just ate it up. But an incredible job by him, and it's awesome to watch. And like this isn't like a fun cute story, Connor. Like they're really good. They're really good.
It's jarring. It's
Yeah.
very jarring. And I've tried to explain it as clearly as possible. Look, I never thought that there would be a day in which I'd have to discuss on this show Indiana being a significant favorite against an SEC power in a game that could, in theory, have a national champion emerge from it.
Yeah.
And so it's very strange because like when we were talking about like the last time we talked about a relevant Indiana team, like when we were recording for like the Tennessee Bowl
Tennessee
game.
Bowl game. Or was it Ole Miss?
The 2019 was Tennessee, and 2020 was, I guess, yeah, you know what? I should include the 2020 bowl game. You're right. I should include 2020, and a game in which Ole Miss won. So like
Right.
this is all just, it's bizarre in about every way. Where are you at with this Alabama team at this point? Because we'll get your score prediction in a little bit. Do you feel like this team is playing with house money and that it can actually sell internally? Look, guys, I know we've got some flaws, but we're kind of getting healthy at the right time. We kind of have the ultimate ace in the hole with Ty Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain level of self-awareness. Like, do you feel like this team has rounded into form at the exact right time?
I want to say yes, but you threw out the phrase self-awareness, and there's something that Ty Simpson said in the SEC championship aftermath, which was, we know that we're the best offense in the country. And that was
I puked in my mouth, Marler. I puked in my mouth when I heard him say that.
It was so, disingenuous isn't the right word, because I think he might have believed it, but it was like, it was so disheartening and frustrating to hear as a Bama fan, because it's like, you just got your ass kicked for 4 quarters. You had -3 rushing yards, Connor, -3. And so that part, like, it's hard for me just because of what you said. If you would have said everything else and not the self-awareness part, I probably would have had a different answer. It's just hard for me to think that part. Now, I will say this. In 2024, I caught a lot of heat from Bama fans, and I was like doing a Bama podcast with the guys from Next Round, and like there was a guy. This will shock you and some of the listeners who might not remember, or who remember me from the SDS days, but like a South Carolina. I was doing South Carolina podcast, doing the Bama podcast, and then doing my own stuff, and then out here in ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. Guy comes up to me at the SC championship game after I get off Feinbaum and goes, he's just staring a hole through me. And you and I have talked about this. It was that look where I'm like, this guy is either going to punch me in the face or he is going to like ask for an autograph or something stupid. Like, it's like one of those in betweens. Like, I've done something where this guy does either like likes me or hates me, and there's no in between.
He's not talking about the weather to you.
No, not at all. And he sat next to us at this table at the bar in the Omni, and he finally, after like an hour, comes over and goes, "Are you Chris Marler?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "It is absurd that they let a South Carolina homer talk about Alabama football on that podcast." And I was like, "Yeah, buddy, you nailed it. You nailed it. You got me.
That's it.
To a T."
Wow.
I feel like I talked about Alabama last year with the same type of objectivity and saying, I didn't think they deserved to be in the playoff. They weren't good enough to make it. They had so many flaws, and they had so many opportunities last year to be in the playoff. This year, I don't feel that way. This year, I think they 1,000% deserve to be in the playoff. And then you cannot look at their schedule and what they did throughout the season and say that, and just be prepared, Tyler. I'm about to give you a very long-winded answer. But like the idea that they were so bad hinged off of mainly the SEC championship game, which was fine. But then the other two things that everyone kept saying very ignorantly, in my opinion, was they've been bad for a month. Why have they been bad for a month? Because they barely lost to a top 10 team that made the playoff in Oklahoma when they had 3 turnovers and missed a field goal. And like keep in mind going into that game, Bama led the SEC in turnover margin. Oklahoma had like I think 2 or more in like 7 of their 9 games. Then you talk about the Auburn game, and all of a sudden, everything became they barely beat a bad Auburn team. Everyone barely beat that Auburn team. They had 7 losses, and 6 of the 7 losses were by 7 points, which is what Bama beat them by. So I thought that part, along with the injuries that were happening, which I know we're not allowed to make as an excuse, but it was like there's no part of me that wanted to play Georgia in Atlanta, and not just because they'd already played them once or how good Georgia is. I was I was begging to play Texas A&M. If you're a Bama fan, just begging to play Texas A&M because they hadn't played anybody all season. So to go in there and kind of get kicked around in that game, and the best team won, and Georgia has been awesome to close out the season once again. But it felt like the narrative around it was very odd because it was like it felt way more forced, and that people weren't doing their research on how good the team had been throughout the season than anything. And so when you go to that Oklahoma team or that Oklahoma game, I love that they were an underdog. Anytime Bama gets to play as an underdog, it does feel like they're playing
Was Bama officially an underdog? Because I saw points like some sites had Bama as a 1-point underdog, some had Bama as a 1-point favorite. Like, what do we decide? You know this world so much more than I do. Like, what is the official? Hey, they were actually an underdog. Like, who gets to decide that?
That game was on a Friday. On Wednesday, Bama was a 1.5-point favorite, and it shifted all the way by 3 points to Oklahoma being a 1.5-point favorite, which is like it feels like they probably should have been. You're on the road, you're at home, like, and you saw what happened in the first game. But again, I kept saying like in the first game, and I was wrong at the time, but it was like, yeah, I don't think John Mateer is going to be able to play mistake-free football. I think that, and people also forget Ty Simpson was having like a career game in that game, like from a yardage standpoint. Like I know he threw the pick 6, but it was like they were very close to having the narrative be, wow, this team was 11-1. And they're just banged up in Atlanta. And so that part was really weird to me. And I kept saying, like, if they don't have the 3 turnovers, they don't have a missed 36-yard field goal, maybe throw out the field goal part, Connor, because that has been a problem with Bama since before you and I even did the podcast. So it's like...
And then it wasn't for a very brief moment of time, and now it is again. But maybe it isn't again because of how the Oklahoma game played out, and suddenly Bama's just got the kicking advantage.
Kicker you. That's what everyone's always said. But no, it felt like they were talking about them incorrectly. And I say this all the time. I hate the Yankees. I get it. I know why people hate Alabama. I totally understand. But I felt like they deserved to be in the playoff. And I do feel like if they beat Indiana, I just think there's a ceiling over this team. I don't think they're good enough to beat Indiana. I don't think we'll get to the score prediction. I don't mean like give away my hand. I don't think that they're good enough to beat Ohio State or Georgia again. But like, if you get past this one, it's like what does the narrative become? And let me ask you a question: what did they have to do in the playoff to turn the narrative from what people were saying about how they didn't belong in the first place?
Are you saying Indiana or Alabama?
Alabama.
I think if Alabama wins this game, the irony is that the anti-SEC crowd will say, well, Bama shouldn't have ever been in the field in the first place. And this is 2017 all over again, even though, in my opinion, Bama still deserved to be in 2017. We literally did a podcast in which we dug deep into that discussion. And the narrative will be, well, Bama shouldn't have been there at all. And the selection committee just conveniently ignored the SEC championship in that result when Bama earned an extra game. And, idle teams should have jumped them, which I didn't think was the case, even if Bama played uninspiring football.
Yeah.
But Bama's facing its 8th top 25 opponent this year, and all of which have been in the top 16, 7 of which have been in the top 15.
How many away from home?
And that would have been, you're going to make me do math on the fly.
Oklahoma was at home. Tennessee was at home. Vandy was at home. So 5?
Yeah, so 5. Yeah, because Mizzou, Oklahoma, Georgia. Yeah, we're talking. Yeah, I mean, that's a ton.
Yeah.
And, and then Georgia and Indiana, both neutral site. Like, there is something to be said for a team that, if you just get to this place in the semifinal, and if that's the road that it took to get there, you kind of just have to throw up your hands and go, all right, they earned it.
Yeah.
They earned it. Like, there should be no debate, in my opinion, whatsoever, if that's the case.
I felt like, and maybe I'm just being delusional, I thought that if they made it, then that would be the end of the argument. But you make a good point, because it never is with Alabama and a lot of teams in the SEC, where it's just like, because at this point, I think too, you can just say stuff and it just becomes factual. I felt like I was losing my mind looking at the side by side of Notre Dame and Bama, because it was like, Are we gonna, I understand they lost to Florida State. Are we just gonna pretend like they don't have the best win of anybody in the country at Georgia? And then you put the side by side and it's like, all right, here's all the metrics they're going off of. Strength of record, Bama's higher. Strength of schedule, Bama's higher. Strength of or like ranked wins, opponent win percentage. I think I texted you and I was like, what are the metrics that we should be looking at here? That because I just kept wanting to figure out like what am I missing? And it was I don't know. I do think that they're still very flawed and they're
Very
very
flawed.
limited in some ways. They cannot run the football.
How nervous are you about that, knowing that Indiana, even though they're going to be without Stephen Daly, who's been really huge in that area,
Yeah.
Kamara's kind of been like he was the preseason All-American, and he's kind of been more of like a hurries guy, and he hasn't necessarily been get to the quarterback type guy. So like their defensive line kind of maybe has a couple of question marks, but it's still a really good run defense. And Bama, as we know, is just lost, completely lost.
It's so
Like
bad.
the
Yeah.
numbers are jarring. The fact that if the season ended today, they'd have their worst rushing offense since 1955. Like it's insane.
Before Bear Bryant.
3 years before Bear Bryant, and that team went 0-10. By the way, have you said? And I'll say this just for you. How many times have you said "run the damn ball" this year
None.
to no avail, knowing that there's just you're yelling into a void?
So I have not yelled that once because I know they can't do it.
Yeah.
The frustration part, if you're Alabama, is and I saw this in the Vanderbilt game, and I was like, this is a problem because they had just beaten Georgia, and it, like honestly, man, like I have said more times than not, way more times than not this year. Just you have to throw it 50 times in this game if you have any chance of winning because they can't run the football. Now they did run the ball well at times against Oklahoma. I think they averaged like 3.4 yards per carry, which that felt like a big win.
Longest run that they've had since week 2, final minute against Louisiana Monroe. That Daniel Hill run. People are never going to forget the 30-yard run against Oklahoma.
Where were you when Daniel Hill almost got him within field goal range?
Yep.
No, I meant the first game against Oklahoma. That was the only game because I think they had. Dude, you know that Vegas books were putting out lines that you could bet the how many total rushing yards they would have, and they set it at 80 against Oklahoma.
That seems high.
It was the easiest money I've ever made. It was like. In how many games? Like I don't like. There's no way they're going to do that. So, yeah, they can't run the ball. But you saw this as a problem early, and I think if you're a Bama fan and you are a logical person, which don't go hand in hand a lot, but like the idea that they can't run the football is way more frustrating when you see stuff like against Vanderbilt when you're 4th and 1 in the first quarter and you're going play action. And Ty Simpson throws his first interception on the year because you're like, you don't feel like you can get a yard against Vandy. Or like, and even at the time, I was like, well, maybe they're just trying to be too cute. Then later on in that game, you put Caden Proctor in the Wildcat, and it was like, oh, this sucks, man. Like, this is, I just want you to, it's cute and it's adorable, Grub. It's awesome. The screen pass, Josh Pate's reaction to the screen pass is one of the funniest things that's happened all year. But would love for you to line up behind that guy and whatever other 4 and 5 stars you have on this team and run the football for 1 yard. And they can't do it. And I think that's been the thing that scares me the most about Indiana is, and Brooks Austin talks about this a lot. It's a really good point. It's like they do what all really good teams try to do and good coaching staffs do, which is make you play left-handed, and they attack your weaknesses. And one thing that I have been confused about all year, Connor, is I thought Georgia should have won the first game if they don't get cute multiple times near the goal line. Everyone talks about the 4th and 1 play to Cash Jones, which was a huge play from LT Overton. But before that, in the first quarter, they had a chance to I think they threw it on like 4th and goal or like 3rd and goal or something like that. And it was like, I thought they could have run the ball. They averaged 7 yards a carry in that game. And I think if Kirby kicks that field goal at the end, they tie it up and have all the momentum and win. But at the same time, it's like, then you have the Vandy game right after that where like they're going in to go up 2 scores and Diego fumbles inside the 10-yard line. You have to credit Bama for all the things they've done really well. But those 2 games back to back, then Ahmad Hardy only having 11 carries going into the 4th quarter against Bama. It was like, why is no one attacking this run defense? And then Tennessee really couldn't because they started playing. They were so far behind they had to throw the ball. And that to me, it felt like they kind of got away. Like kind of whistle through the graveyard a little bit and not having anyone run the ball down their throat. Then you saw Georgia and Atlanta, and I think that's exactly what Indiana is going to try to do at the Rose Bowl.
They'd like to be able to run the ball, but you're getting LT Overton back. Tim Keenan, him being healthy, that matters for what Bama's doing up front. It's not, you feel like Deontay Lawson is still out there. You feel like Bray Hubbard can still step up and make a big time play. And if you're Indiana, you're thinking, you've got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, let's let him spin it. And if these receivers on the outside, Surratt and Cooper, who have been so good for IU in big time moments, like if they're able to step up and make plays, then that's who they're going to lean on in those moments. Like that 3rd and 6 pass won Fernando Mendoza the Heisman. The pass that he made against the one that he made on the last possession against Ohio State.
Oh, okay. I said Penn. I thought you were the Penn State game.
No. The Penn State one, that was more. I give Amar Cooper more credit for that than Mendoza.
Gus
Unreal
Johnson,
play, but Gus Johnson, good call or bad call?
That's unbelievable. Bad call. Dude, I mean, like they were 3 and 6. It was unbelievable. But you're right. Like that's kind of a situation that you find yourself in if you're Indiana, and you wonder if it's something that'll be overthought. And I think if you're Bama, you better hope it is, because it's like, I do think that this team is good enough to run the football and stop the run and make you one-dimensional. And I have said all year, if somebody just lines up and runs the football right at Alabama, like Oklahoma hasn't been able to do it all year, and so like you can kind of take that one away. But if Georgia just lines up and runs the football down their throat, like they did at times in Atlanta, you saw what that looks like. And I know they're healthier. I know they got LT Overton back, who like that's huge. And I think you mentioned this earlier, and it's something that's a really good point. The one little glimmer of hope I have for this Bama team is this is the healthiest they've been all year, like dating back to that Georgia win. And I think like the defensive line being as healthy as it is, and then also playing with the amount of confidence the defense has right now, I think it's huge. I wonder if you can't rush for 80 to 100 yards, like, and Ty Simpson's going to have to sit there when people start pinning his ears back. You've seen at times, like Missouri, really, where he got pressured early on in the second half of that game, and he was hearing ghosts and footsteps the rest of the entire second half.
How do we feel about the possibility of rain? Rain at the Rose Bowl, that should cancel the game, in my opinion. Like, come on, we don't need. They already took the sunset away from us, kicking off at 1 p.m. local time. Like that's yeah. So no sunset either way. It looks like for this one, with the way that the bowl schedule kind of lines up with ESPN and the way that they're doing it now. But if it rains, do we get to perhaps replay this game? Pretend that the result doesn't count.
I don't know if it'll matter either way, because I don't think Bama's going to get more rushing yards without the rain. I hope it's not like a driving storm. It's weird too, because this is like Georgia fans remember if they went out to that TCU game, it for whatever reason, like it never rains in Southern California, but it rains a lot this time of year down there.
Yeah.
The weather down there for that weekend was awful, and so I hope it's not like that, because it's just like this slow gray, like the Rose Bowl is like, it feels like the one thing that we still have from a nostalgia standpoint and a fan base, or not fan base, but a nostalgia standpoint for college football. So I hope it doesn't do that, but that doesn't make me feel good if it is going to rain.
If Bama loses this game, what's a job that we can give Kalen DeBoer that we can just send him off to?
Well, that's Tim Brando. He seems to know everything.
Michael Wilbon, too, was spot on with his take that he was going to Michigan. Everybody's been really accurate with all this stuff, and it hasn't been Jimmy Sexton whatsoever.
Dude, here's the thing. And I know that this is going to sound stupid, but like, I shouldn't be allowed to talk about the NBA. No one's going to tune in to hear me talk about the NBA.
I would.
I appreciate that. There's no reason that Michael Wilbon was that emphatic about like, I think we've really lost a lot of the ability for like people to be objective ever about like certain things. It's just like there's no reason to a lot of times. Like Portnoy's on Fox. You've got all, like, I'm not going to get on the soapbox here, but it's like it's crazy to me that like the people that are allowed to talk about college football and don't care about the sport. It's so weird to me.
The best part about the Wilbon clip is that he didn't even know. Repeatedly, he had to be reminded by Kornheiser what day the game was being played.
Right.
Between Bama and Oklahoma. It's incredible.
Little finger on the pulse situation there.
Oh, gosh. He just gets it. All right. Score prediction.
Ugh.
I've already, by the time people are listening to this, they'll have already heard my score prediction. I'm going with Indiana to win by 3.
Okay.
And I'm not emotionally hedging.
Yeah.
And I've already said, like, would I prefer for my alma mater to win a national championship? Yes, of course. I would love to see my alma mater win a title. Will it devastate me if Indiana loses? No, because Indiana football, I am not a diehard fan. It has never given me a bad day. So I will not, it's stolen valor to say I'll be devastated if they lose, which is the wrong thing probably to say on a podcast, but
Right.
your prediction can't hurt me.
What a logical and reasonable response.
It's dumb. It's
nothing
really
has
dumb. I
changed.
should be leaning into it.
Okay, where do we want to go with this? Because I said that they were going to, I thought they would beat Michigan 2 years ago. I thought they would lose to Georgia in Atlanta. I thought they'd lose to Georgia pretty much every time they played them, though. So that's probably not a good answer. I love when Alabama's an underdog. I love when Alabama's an underdog. If I'm objectively giving you my thoughts and maybe fears, but maybe both combined, what I think Indiana's going to try to do is make Alabama one-dimensional offensively and get after Ty Simpson early to put pressure on him. And I think that they'll disguise some blitzes and get in his face early. And if they have to play from behind again, I don't know if this Indiana team makes the same mistakes that Oklahoma did. That drop touchdown pass could have made it 24-7 for Oklahoma last week. Also, that's an Oklahoma team that cannot run the football and was forced to throw the ball with a very, in my opinion, average quarterback in terms of completion percentage, accuracy, all that kind of stuff. That's not Mendoza. Mendoza is very, very good, and he will do things that'll hurt Bama a lot more than Mateer did. Now, offensively, I do think they're going to run the football at Alabama and tell Alabama to make them stop it. I think the thing that worries me the most about this game is this. Kurt Signetti is a jerk. And if he gets the opportunity
Confirmed.
to make a point and prove a point for whatever, because he is the epitome of Michael Jordan making up stories in his head of somebody disrespecting him, and now I have to go prove a point to it's like it's the whole Georgia. Everyone said we were going 7-5. It's like literally no one said that. No one said that to you. And so I think Signetti it will somehow keep inside those four walls of that locker room the idea that this is big bad Alabama. No one thinks you can win. I've seen it on Twitter this week, which is crazy. Like, all I'm seeing is Bama fan. Everyone thinks Bama is going to walk Indiana out the door. And it's like, no, I haven't seen that anywhere. Like, I think that level of mind games and like mental competition that he will play with his own team, he does it better than almost anybody besides Kirby. And I think that if they get the chance, because I see this going into the fourth quarter as like a one-score game. If they get the chance to pull away and put like an emphatic nail in the coffin, I think they will. So for that, I think that Indiana will have something similar to what Georgia did in Atlanta, where it's like at the end of that game, they're down by 2 scores. Maybe Indiana's only up by 1, but Bama's forced to go for it on 4th and 10 from like their 15, and then they just put another tack on there. So I think Indiana wins by 13 or 14.
Wow.
And I think this is, I honestly think of all of the lines, this one stinks the most because people are begging you in Vegas to take Alabama. Like you haven't seen a line this big for Alabama since the 2008 SEC championship game, even with all the great Georgia teams. Like hasn't been that big since 2008 Georgia or 2008 Florida, which that game Florida won by 11. I think that you see something similar here with like a late touchdown to cover or extend it, and I think they win by 13 or 14.
Never thought I'd see this day.
This sucks.
What you're picking Indiana. Yeah, look, emotional hedge. I guess we kind of both are in some way because I'm picking Bama to cover the spread.
I know my role.
You're picking Indiana to win. By the way, last thing, hotel breakfast yesterday. We were in Dunedin, had a nice little post Christmas weekend there.
Yeah.
Every single table, bottle of Texas Pete.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I thought if Marler were here, Marler would be drinking that whole thing. Just
Dude, the
downing
popcorn
it.
is still the best thing they've ever put out.
That popcorn, people need to talk about that Texas Pete popcorn. I mean, no free ads here, but that was. No. We're no longer in the Texas Pete business at this current moment in time. But let's just say if they ever do come back on board,
Cool.
The lifetime supply of the popcorn.
Can we just real quick? Can we tell a one final peel behind the onion story?
The floor is yours.
Do you know how we got that ad from Duff?
Did you chug an entire bottle of Texas Pete?
No, he was asking me out of the blue. He goes, "Hey, do you like Texas Pete?" And he was like around, I guess, like he was like pitching things. I was like, "Oh my god, I love Texas Pete." And he was like, "No, but like they might sponsor the show. Like, do you? And I was like, oh my god. So when I was in high school, what I used to do, because I was trying to count calories, I don't do it anymore, but I was trying to count calories, and I was like, and be like an athlete. So I would have just deli meat in a bag, and then I would douse it with Texas Pete, and I would just eat that with my hands. And I'm saying all this like word vomit out loud to him, and he's like, okay, so like maybe. Well, I mean, I'll pass that along that you like it, and then lo and behold, we get the thing. So I got to run. Fiance just came in, and but this is great, dude. I appreciate you having me on. It was a blast. I'm so glad y'all are doing well, and hopefully we'll have to come back on for an Alabama national championship.
If Bama makes it to national championship, we'll come back on.
Perfect.
How about that?
Sounds good, brother.
Love it. Thanks, man.
Of course.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. Who you got?
Oh man, and we talked about this off air. I'm glad you haven't seen this lad. Freshman Army quarterback. God's power wahihe.
God's power. One word, one name.
One name, God's power wahihe, which starts with an N, by the way. Wahihe. Like I said, freshman quarterback. Now, if you're a quarterback at Army, what do? Run the rock, right? He had one of the most electric bowl game runs I've ever seen. It's just an absolute rout. I mean, D-Day 2, they're calling it, Army versus UConn. 9-win UConn team that could have got to 10 wins just got run out of the building. Did not want to hit, did not want to tackle. And that's not where you want to be against a 7-win Army team that's, they did not respect the troops on that day and the troops disrespected them. He had an insane 70-yard run. And if you haven't seen this, guys, check it out. It was in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, which is very funny that that's being sponsored by Wasabi. But that being said, like, I love to see, again, a team that everything matters for in bowl season. It's rare to see, like I said, kind of a mid-major in UConn that has, like we talked about this in the preview with Houston, like has like that 10th win matters a lot, for pride and everything. And just to see this gentleman who, grew up in a military family out of Texas. He kind of went to one of those like military schools and just kind of knew, you'd be like a serviceman first and like a football player second. But just hats off to this lad who it feels like about every other year. They're Monken and Army, not that Monken. They produce a quarterback, a running back, something that is just an electric runner of the football. And he's ours for this year. Go watch a little bit of God's power wahihe, and it'll be worth your day.
One could say God's power on that run.
He was powered by something. It was like, I mean, it felt like the parting of the Red Sea. God's power was with him on that run because he was throwing dudes sideways.
Did we see the PFF numbers on missed tackles forced on this run?
It was just an American flag. That was the number. It was just a salute emoji. It was like, don't even try it.
Yeah.
Anyone could try to tackle him, but it would fail.
Yeah, just a couple of yards after first contact. Love a bowl game moment that just makes you go, dang, I don't care who that's happening to. That's just awesome. And that will be the type of play that 20 years from now, close your eyes and you're thinking about, what are the highlights of my life, athletically speaking? God's power will have that one in his back pocket.
God's power will have that one. Won't he do it?
What a sentence. I'm going with Quinn Ewers, who got his first career NFL win, first career NFL touchdown pass as well. A game in which the 7th round pick, weird that happened the way that it did, felt like his fall in the draft was a little bit under discussed because of Shedeur, but had a great, unbelievable start to that game in which he hits Theo Weiss, your boy Weiss, with his first touchdown pass.
That boy Weiss.
And even Tua on the sideline, that was like, that was incredible, man. Like, Quinn Ewers might be healthy, still might actually be capable. 7th round pick, but in my unbiased opinion of someone who watched a 7th round pick get every blade of grass that he wanted on Sunday Night Football against my team and perhaps cost it a chance at the number 1 overall seed. 7th round picks are great. They're very in vogue right now in college football or in the NFL. And Quinn Ewers shouldn't have been a 7th round pick because the oblique wasn't right. And I do think that when he is confident in an offense, I think it's a fun sight to see. I really do. And I don't know that Mike McDaniel is going to be the person guiding him in that offense, but I think for Dolphin fans that have grown frustrated with this version of Tua, I think that there was a bit of an exhale watching all the things that Quinn Ewers did in this game. Like his we might talk about like his deep ball not having the mustard that it should for someone that was as decorated as he was as a recruit and all those different things. But man, he still has this touch and this sense of calm about his game that when he's healthy and he's not necessarily compensating for something, it's great. Like players are talking about afterwards. It's kind of nice to see someone that can actually stare down pressure and take a hit and get a throw off on target and stuff and still do these things that you need to be able to do at the NFL level. So not saying he's going to become a starter, but you saw what that meant to him afterwards. And just a weird ending to his time at Texas with how it played out in the NFL draft. We had him on this show actually like this week last year, right after the Clemson game. And I think his career is going to be a bit of a prototype for this era of NIL, of what are you prioritizing? What is the advantage of going to this system versus that system, starting your high school or ending your high school career early to be able to collect on the NIL earnings and all that stuff. But if he ends up getting a cup of coffee as an NFL starter, then he's kind of proving people wrong that he should have entered the portal and found another place to play. Like I was trying to think about this throughout the year, if there was any place where Quinn Ewers would have been a nice fit, if he could have, knowing that Arch Manning was coming, left Texas and found an ideal home for his skill set, where would that have been? And honestly, Texas Tech is kind of the one that comes to mind. Is there any others? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is there any others that would have just made like kind of perfect sense for him? Because Miami obviously got the Carson Beck thing and that worked out well for him, but I still think getting to start in the NFL as a rookie, something Brady Cook has also done, shout out Brady Cook, that kind of defeats the purpose of going somewhere else and hoping that you could maybe carve out, help yourself with your NFL path. If you're getting that opportunity as a rookie, you've done something right to show you that, you deserve to be at the NFL level.
I think a guy like that is such a sliding doors moment because if people knew he was coming back, it would have changed the entire course of college football. That's not like a cop out. I mean, again, it's related to some of the Lane Kiffin stuff this year, where it's okay, we're waiting on this coach, so this coach can do this, and that happens with portal players as well, particularly quarterbacks. I mean, could be a situation where he was at a bigger money program, could be a situation where he's at Tennessee, with that kind of situation going down where they're looking at their options, but they weren't really looking at their options until that happened. So yeah, I mean, it's we're looking at the world we see now, but that news is obviously leaked ahead of time, and guys just randomly hit the portal, and you go, how again, like I'm sure Oregon would be happy with Dante Moore in that situation, but you never know. But that being said, I mean, yours is the funniest. Sometimes I really do feel like lately, like the football gods, it's like the Truman Show and they're real because this is the funniest guy. I mean, if you're Mike McDaniel and you want to say, okay, I'm a good, at least offensive coordinator. Or you might not like my pants, okay, but at least I can.
People hate his pants, man.
You might give me a base level. I've thrown away my pants that look like that. Actually, related story because of how much people talk about his pants. I'm like, I'm done with the joggers that show off the Jordans. I got to grow up. People hate those pants now. So that being said,
literally wearing them right now as we speak.
So
I've got Adidas joggers on.
They're so comfy, but these are like the level up from that, though. These are like the business cas.
They're like capris, the ones that McDaniel wears.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, that being said, man, there's not a funnier name that I think can make, Tua's arm look like barbecue chicken more than Quinn Ewers. A guy that struggled with arm strength due to injury to a degree, but you can make that same argument about Tua, both super decorated kind of number one level quarterback, 5-star recruits, that their arm strength kind of started to wane over the course of their careers. And so really terrible news for Tua that a guy like Ewers can come in after being kind of dejected, being a 7th-round draft pick, being questioned about his health, his arm strength, and McDaniel being like, yeah, I can win with average both of those. I just can't have the worst I've ever seen. And also a hilarious thing that he was able to reenact the Red River rivalry against Baker Mayfield. Obviously, they never played each other, but OU, Texas. And then also, obviously, he was almost the, Steve Sarkisian breakthrough win against Saban when they were in the Big 12, him getting injured, with the lead kind of led Alabama to come back. And so that's like Alabama.
He beat him a year later, though.
No, facts. But it was a year. It was foreshadowing at that point. So Bama fans are very aware of him. And so I know a lot of Bama fans will watch Tua just for that. So be like, this guy again. I mean, we thought this guy was dead, but that point being, sometimes it is better for a guy to fall in the draft and end up in kind of a perfect situation, which is
He did.
exactly. I mean, to mold. Okay, I'm used to Tua, and now I'm going to go to Quinn Ewers is like 1-to-1. I know he was being mocked to the Cowboys a lot for a very similar reason. Dak Prescott's got some similarities there. So yeah, I mean, I think at least being a clipboard guy that can kind of win you a game here or there, I think is his floor. Because again, like he had the arm talent, he got injured. We hit on it that they were hiding an injury, and it kind of leaked out after the season how hurt he was. So yeah, I think they got a bargain there if nothing else, and it changes really a lot of things because if you're McDaniel, you go, this isn't my fault. Like, what can I do? I can win with this guy. So good for Quinn, man. Seems like a really awesome guy. And to your point, man, I would almost ask the inverse, and I will end on this. How many times would Sarkisian have gone to Quinn Ewers this year if he was still on the roster? Probably a lot.
No, he wouldn't.
Week 1, he would have now. Week 1, he would have now.
Sark was loyal to Quinn. He would have been loyal to Arch. He would have been he wouldn't have made that move in game. I don't think.
It's just funny that he was kind of showing the door a little bit to your degree when his resume led him to be a 7th-round pick. He probably could have maybe used another year. And for Arch, who struggled so mightily early, and you go, dang, I'm starting to kind of miss Quinn in this, you know?
Yeah, and you could say there was the Notre Dame speculation with Ewers, and that didn't prove to necessarily material. That didn't come to fruition. And you could say, oh, well, could he have made more money going to Notre Dame and then going to the NFL, even if he's like a 4th or a 5th round pick? Yes, in theory, you could have. But if the whole goal of getting to the NFL is getting the opportunity to be a starting quarterback, then okay, then that's kind of the point. Like Jalen Milroe ends up being a 2nd round pick, but he goes to a situation where all of a sudden they're looking at Sam Darnold going, buddy, this is working out. We don't need a quarterback of the future. Sam Darnold is still young enough to where he can be in this spot. And all of a sudden, I bet Jalen Milroe is looking at a situation going, I would have taken being a later round pick to go to the right situation where I at least feel like I kind of have that path. And if Quinn Ewers, I'm not saying that he does just because he won one game, but if all of a sudden they're looking him through a different way and he gets to be essentially what Spencer Rattler was this past year for the Saints of we're going to draft a quarterback and you get to kind of be our starter from the jump. And if you end up being the guy, great. We're still going to draft a quarterback and have him develop behind you. And we're going to see what we have in you. We're going to see if we can make this thing go because quite frankly, post hip surgery, Tua is just a different player. And that's just been the case for the last 5 years. So yeah, happy for Quinn Ewers. Find myself rooting for him. Would love to see him do more things in the NFL.
I bet Sark called McDaniel after that. Was like, don't you just love that kid? He just seems so easy to coach,
Kind of do a lot of the similar things too with the way that they like to be able to run an offense. So yeah, there's something to be said for it. All right, little housekeeping. We will recap the playoff on Friday. We'll recap playoff quarterfinal matchups. That's Friday, January 2nd. That is the day after New Year's Day. So technically, this is the last time that we're going to record in 2025. So does that mean I get to say see you next year, Will?
Please. We've talked about this off air, but just an absolute RIP Bozo year for me. And I'm so excited for 2026, what the future brings, and for you guys rocking with us. And yeah, man, it's going to be a continually wild time in the SEC.
It is. Still got a lot of stuff left. Still a whole lot of football to be left. Don't be depressed. We still got so much more to talk about. All right, that's a pod. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Saturday Down South, at CJ Rivera, at Gus Howard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.